hier rein, oder? Gut.
A wonderful good morning, ladies and gentlemen, wherever you are watching us. A warm welcome from Berlin to the third edition of the Global Bioeconomy Summit. And of course, this summit is digital, therefore you can watch us happily at home and still be with the community that is trying to enhance the idea of the positive effects of bioeconomy all around the globe. And of course, in month 10 after the pandemic has hit, we are all used to doing things online. So even for those of you who have just joined us today, welcome on this second day of the conference. There is just going to be a very brief introduction of how to handle it, how to have, your etiquette in our communication efforts. Left to the stream, you will be actually seeing that you can communicate, you can see the agenda, you can click on the button below. There you will find everybody else who is online right at the moment, and you might want to pick up a conversation or two. To the right is a button that you don't see right at the moment, but when we want to communicate with you, when we want to get your questions in, then there will be a window and you will be either giving your statements, your questions to us, or the other way around. We'd like to put a couple of polls to you and therefore gather your opinion. So having done all that, let me just quickly refer to the very traditional social media that are, of course, still online, and that's the hashtag on Twitter, hashtag GBS 2020. So please keep posting. And yesterday we've seen on our website that a number of people have contributed. So thank you very much for that. And keep up the good work today. We have a number of issues today, but I'm not going to even talk about it because we are going to start with the political addresses now. And for those of you, ladies and gentlemen, who were with us yesterday, you might already have heard that Germany in January this year has actually published the new German bioeconomy strategy. And that was quite a wonderful affair because you had two ministers together saying this is where we are going to go in the next couple of years as far as bioeconomy is concerned, with wonderful pictures as well. New devices with different materials. And I believe the minister who's going to talk to you now actually had a helmet made of wood material. So something very new. But as befits the issue, of course, bioeconomy is not just an issue that is resident in one or two ministries. It's a whole range of ministries that it is targeting, but there are two ministries in the lead, the one being the one from which we are broadcasting right at the moment, and the other one is the Ministry for Food and Agriculture, and we are so happy that the minister has actually come a couple of kilometers from her own ministry to join us here and to extend her greeting remarks. Julia Klöckner, thank you so much for being here, and please, your camera and your audience is working now. Thank you.
Thank you for your words, and hello together, good morning. And I speak in German, in my mother language. And dear Mr. Chu, guten Morgen, sehr geehrter Herr Generaldirektor, sehr geehrte Damen und Herren, liebe Gäste. Ich freue mich, dass Sie zuschauen, dass Sie dabei sind. Und ich möchte Sie gerne sofort mitnehmen in die Zukunft, also mit Ihnen einen Blick in die Zukunft werfen.
What the near future might look like.
Wohl aussehen. Die Zukunft.
Well, the future, what could it look like? The threat of COVID-19 might have worn off. Life has returned to normal because we have vaccines available. We can treat the virus. Researchers have done their job well in labs. Science and research, that stands for progress in our world. test tubes and petri dishes. That stands for remarkable achievements in developing the basis of our existence. In my opinion, the bioeconomy aims to do just that. Many sustainably produced bio-based goods will be established on the market. They promote climate stewardship. Algae and sugar help us save oil. Synthetic materials are a part of our sustainable circular economy because we collect and recycle them efficiently in order to reuse them again in our daily life. They are more than waste products in a throwaway society. In car manufacturing, we are increasingly using bio-based, lightweight materials. By the way, for example, for racing cars, is that sustainable? Well, that's one question, but what works there often works on the streets as well. This lightweight construction helps us show that renewable materials can replace certain parts in cars. These materials, resistant materials, contribute to e-mobility. We are rethinking building concepts. Building and construction with wood and renewable materials, that helps promote climate stewardship. It binds carbon. And this carbon sequestration is a key contribution to climate stewardship. The bioeconomy will deliver on that, and in part already does. This has enormous potential for the agricultural and forestry sectors, for our farmers, because we have to import fossil fuels, but renewable resources grow right at our doorstep. That creates sources of income for farmers and foresters. What is key is that we create sources of raw materials that do not compete with food production. Because there had been a debate about, well, food production against other production. We need to recycle bio and waste products more efficiently. So, as you can see, there are solid economic reasons for investing in bioeconomy. We have one common goal within the federal government. I'm delighted that I was joined by my colleague Anja Karliczek, the Federal Minister for Education and Research. We want to live in a way that does not compromise the livelihood of future generations. Every barrel of crude oil saved, every square meter of soil maintained is an asset for generations to come. We must therefore work hand in glove. We can't just do our own thing and embark on our own agenda. Bioeconomy has great potential. It covers all sectors of our economy. Scientific and technological progress helps us create entirely new bio-based innovations. This year's Nobel Prize for Chemistry was awarded for the discovery of the gene scissors CRISPR-Cas, a strong signal for the potential of research and development. We need to address that because it is an emotional debate that is going on in our society. The method of genome editing is breaking the mold in plant breeding. The bioeconomy benefits tremendously from resilient crops that deliver high yields and stable yields as well. Thanks to innovative plant breeding methods, we need less fertilizers and less crop protection products. That resolves target conflicts. As we can see, the path towards a bio-based economy consists of a number of elements that we need to combine. Now, what does that imply for us in Germany? Well, we want to rely less on fossil materials. We must always take climate stewardship and environmental protection, as well as food security, into account. We also want to work on achieving the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals by 2030. That's why we, as the federal government, at the beginning of this year, adopted the new bioeconomy strategy. It is our mission to integrate bioeconomic principles in all spheres of our life, our society. You can see here, we will come back to this. paper. As I said, we want to integrate the bioeconomy in all spheres of our life, our society, our economy, and to do that we are investing quite a bit of money. 1 billion euros invested this year alone in research and development and innovation. These funds are also earmarked for developing the bioeconomy. More than 80 million euros alone, that's what we are spending at my ministry to promote applied research, for example, within the Renewable Resources Funding Program. Our government knows that this transformation towards a sustainable bioeconomy is a global challenge. This transition goes hand in hand with complex interactions that know no national borders. That is why, ladies and gentlemen, I'm delighted that you, Dr. Zhu, are engaging in this discussion intensely on the future of the bioeconomy as the Director General of FAO. We support FAO very strongly from the German side, but also from my ministry. It is the key knowledge organization of the United Nations in the field of agriculture, forestry, and fisheries, as well as food security. My ministry is an important strategic partner for FAO, and we will remain firm by your side. We look back on years of close and successful cooperation with FAO regarding the bioeconomy. FAO has launched an expert group of different governments and NGOs with financial support from my ministries. It addresses concepts and policy measures from roughly 20 countries and has created guidelines for producing bioenergy while ensuring food security. Other countries and regions benefit from developing their own strategies for bioeconomy. That's vital, because we must unlock the potential of the bioeconomy for a common resolve to ensure food supply. You all are key players for advancing valuable bioeconomic concepts around the world. Events such as the Global Bioeconomy Summit, well, they allow us to bring together different regional bioeconomic approaches together. And that is very promising indeed. And I do hope that you will take new perspectives and food for thought home from this summit, drawing on what you have learned and experienced here so that we can all contribute together our share to preserve our resources in a sustainable economy together. That is our goal. That is why I am delighted to have and take home this communiqué here today. All the best and stay healthy.
Explanation. It's actually the output of 2 years of work after the second bioeconomy summit in 2018. Everybody got together, and the International Advisory Council on Global Bioeconomy put together their thoughts. That's the communiqué for this year, and hopefully that's going to lead into the next 2 years. And again, thank you very much for that heartfelt opening. And it's not just a political opening, but one really feels that your heart is behind it and not just your head.
Thanks a lot. It was a pleasure.
Great.
Best for you.
Thank you very much, Minister Klöckner. And Minister Klöckner, of course, has already talked about the FAO, the United Nations Food and Agricultural Organization, simply because our next keynote speaker and opener for this conference is going to be coming up now. The FAO has actually published sustainable bioeconomy guidelines to assist countries and bioeconomy operators to develop and implement national and regional sustainable bioeconomy strategies, policies, and programs, guidelines that point to the decoupling of growth and the development of the use of fossil fuels. We have been talking about that yesterday, but this is also FAO policy. Now, In this year, 2020, we'll all know the pandemic has struck, but it's also a year in which, for the third year running, hunger in this world has been on the increase again. So the approach towards bioeconomy, towards bringing about new and better ways of producing food and doing agriculture is very important and in the focus. So we're very, very happy that the Director General of the United Nations Food and Agriculture Organization, Chu Dong-yu, has already sent us his greeting remarks. No, he is there. He is there live. Thank you so much. A warm welcome to Rome.
Yeah, okay.
Good morning, sir.
How are you? Yeah.
We are wonderful, and we hope that you are fine, and we are looking forward to listening to your opening remarks for our conference.
Yeah, I'm delighted to. I'm very delighted to. So I just listening the Minister Julia is my friend. So now I speak. Hello? Can you hear me?
Can hear you, definitely.
Yes.
Yes.
It's my turn?
It is absolutely
Okay.
your turn. I have already sort of rolled out the red carpet for you, or should I better say the green carpet?
Okay. Okay, thank you. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, and dear colleagues, I should appreciate the strong voice from my friend, Minister Julia. And I think so far it's the strongest clear message about the overall understanding of bioeconomy in Europe. I'm so glad. You know, I'm a scientist on the biology and also biotechnology. So many years ago, 20 years ago, we started introduce also bioeconomy in China, in other countries. So Professor Van Braun is my close friend for more than 20 years. We fully understand what is bioeconomy should benefit to the society, to the people, and to the environment. So I'm pleased to be with you today, discuss these important issues as Director General of United Nations, FAO. Last month, FAO celebrated its 75th anniversary, making a historical moment in global food and agriculture development. But it was also a sobering moment, highlighting how urgent it is for us to come together in the global fight against the hunger and malnutrition. About 690 million people in the world, nearly 10% of the world population, went hungry in 2019, and up to 132 million more joined them by the end of this year, 2020. Almost 200 million children still suffering from wasting and stunting, and 3 billion people cannot afford a healthy diet. Yet about 14% of food produced is lost. FAO witnessed the Green Revolution during past 75 years, vast area for cultivation, improved seed quality, and increased level of mechanization on the larger farmers. That's really shift picture from the majority hunger, now it's 10% suffering from food shortage. So we always say as a biologist, one seed can change the world. That's also, I appreciate that the Minister Julia mentioned that the newest technology of the gene editing technology. Yeah? When I was a scientist, we are also developed those kind of involved this development of technology. We know how the power of biotechnology, and also that leads to the new generation of bioeconomy. As the 1970s dawned, environmental awareness was awakening. The world was engaging in the increasingly destructive farming practice, reducing fish stocks, overuse of pesticides in the name of the resistant production. You can see, especially transgenic cotton helps dramatically reduce the pesticide application. That's really good for the environment and good for the farmers' livelihood. You know, the traditional breeding and the cultivar, they have no resistance to the insect. They heavily depend on the spray, pesticide, insecticide, actually. So you can see the traditional breeding or untraditional or biotechnology breeding leads to the resistant cultivar of the cotton. Now is transgenic cotton is dominant in United States, in China, in other parts of the world also. That helps us to really build up an environment-friendly economy, bioeconomy. That's a marvelous example. We have progressively realized how hard the nature we rely upon is being heated. So that's why we have to find the innovative approach by research and develop new products. So in 2015, world came together and agreed on the 2030 agenda, the Sustainable Development Goals that are designed to be blueprinted to achieve the better and more sustainable future for all. For this to happen, we need a global transition towards better production, better nutrition, better environment, and to ensure a better life. Life, I said, not only daily life, we have enough food, we have a clean water, and also life quality as a human being. We need to improve our life quality at a different region, different age, and different development stage even. Such a transition requires a radical transformation that can be achieved through the bioeconomy. I consider three types of innovation necessary for this transition. First is technologically. So that's why I said the biotechnology R&D. And Germany is one of the champions in the past and they invest a lot on the bioeconomy. As Julia mentioned, about 1 billion euro developed those. So technology is a basic biotechnology R&D and the digital and the bio-innovative such as microbiome and application, plus alternatives and alternative source of the protein. So that's comes second layer of the application of biotechnology. And that leads to the bioindustry, buy new bioproducts. You can say the bioproducts for the input, like a new fertilizer, new chemicals, and new seeds, and also byproducts of commodity products. Also, we have a new type of the proteins and new type of the microorganisms. Can they have efficiently to digest the all the pollutants? And then, of course, we need the biosafety regulations globally. We have to understand what is the bottom line for biosafety. And more, because we are working with animals, we have to also consider bioethnics. That's also should be addressed by the government and by policy and by scientific community, and the society, civil society, bioethnics. So that's a technical level innovation. And organization level, we need, I said, we need a new policy to implement, to promote the innovation and the bioeconomy. And also the change in the institutional behavior for the individual scientists and for scientific community. We have also to change the way of doing the research and also responsible for the environment, for the society, and so on. So organizational innovation. And then last but not least, also social, we have to rethinking. We have the wellness and the job creation for not only for the technology progress, and also we have consider what the balance between the technology progress and the social impact and others. So we have to protect our planet. We have to protect our interest of the smallholder farmers, And also we have to protect the consumers, their preference, so it's a complex, as Julia mentioned. It's not, bioeconomy, it's not the single sector. That's why I appreciate the Germany, the summit brings so many key players together. So to this end, FAO is fostering the bioeconomy by supporting South-South and Triangle Cooperation. So South-South, North-South, and developing, and the private and public-private partnership, all kind of partnership we support on the research, development, and innovation, and a new form of multi-government partnership. So I think through that way, we can scale up the bioeconomy activities and share sustainable practice. In the wide bioeconomy, agri-food systems are essential to face the climate change, respect for environment, and decrease the degradation of the biodiversity, and even soil erosion. So we have to take the biotechnology approach, and plus the engineer approach, and plus the new management approach. So for the deal, all the challenge first to the agri-food system on the climate change and the disaster, we need also the package of solution from the three angles, as I mentioned. All form of biotic, abiotic stresses impact on food system should be considered by the government, the scientists, and by the society. Since receiving the mandate to coordinate international work on the food-first bioeconomy at the 2015 Global Forum for Food and Culture, FAO has been actively involved in this. COVID-19 pandemic pushed us to rethink our approach and redouble our efforts. A bioeconomy promotes long-awaited and much-needed bio-innovation, should be essential to a post-pandemic recovery, to build back better, and especially to increase the value of biomass in situ, increase the efficiency in production process, and minimize the food losses and waste also. And how to make recycling, we call the 4R or 3R on the agriculture: input, production, and food loss and food waste. Ladies and gentlemen, I see 5 central elements to make this happening. First, the international cooperation between government and public and private researchers is essential for sharing knowledge and best practice. And FAO lead the Sustainable International Bioeconomy Working Group is an excellent example for this. And the first concrete result of this joint the work of its members was agreed on as a set of aspiration principles and criteria that works as a guidelines to mainstreaming sustainability in the bioeconomy strategies. This principle covers the economy, environment, and social dimensions of sustainability, but also include the governance and the engagement to ensure they reflect these other 3 elements. Secondly, we need a comprehensive metrics and data for monitoring system that allows us to measure the bioeconomy's development and its contributions to SDGs. Priority targeting, such as food and nutrition security, and other social, environment, and economic assessment criteria needed to be agreed upon internationally, led by the global organizations such as FAO. So we also have to build the more partnership among international organizations, UN agencies, together with other institutions internationally. That's a real big challenge for all of us. Building on the principle and criteria mentioned before, FAO and Bioeconomy Working Group have established the theoretical foundation for such a monetary system. Thirdly, bioeconomic initiative need to be linked more closely with the multilateral policy process, such as the multilateral environment agreement, include the Paris Agreement, and achieve biodiversity target. And of course, we also have to link it with others, like international GEM Plus Agreement, and also the others. We have to make use of biodiversity for bioeconomy development. More than 20 countries worldwide have launched holistic bioeconomy strategies, aiming at the sustainable transformation of biological resources production, consumption, and conservation. In most cases, this systematic approach requires the policymakers understand how the design and level of coherence of public policy can contribute or create a barrier to its development. FAO implementing a dedicated project to guide the countries in the development of coherent, sustainable, and circular bioeconomic strategies, programs, and action plans. We have facilitated an important first step to this end by supporting policy dialogue among national decision makers from different ministers, not only Minister of Agriculture, as here you mentioned the Minister of Education and Research, and also we need also Minister of Economy, because they are really powerhouse to how to transfer from the research to the economy development, and also academy and civil society. Firstly, we needed to strengthen human capital policy, capacity development on science policy. I think the sustainable and circular bioeconomy shows the way for the green agri-food system as a key integrated sustainable response and recovery for the pandemic and beyond. FAO have said that they provide capacity through the training and capacity building event, and also as well as a series of knowledge products and the platform to discuss. Finally, we need the research, development, and innovation programs to encourage global cooperation in breakthrough projects. So I really very much appreciate to the German government and Minister of Agriculture and Minister of Education and the Research should be leading the European innovation on the bioeconomy, because that's our future. You like it or you don't like it, we have to find a solution to minimize the risk and to maximize the benefit for the society, for the environment, and for the farmers and for the consumers. Close cooperation between FAO and the European Commission Department for Research and Technology has also led a joint workshop. I think that's also we wanted to, personally, I wanted to also encourage all my colleagues from Europe, from FAO, have a more dialogue and get more inclusive ideas to promote bioeconomy based on science, based on biotechnology. We do this is out of a strong belief that science and technology are the way out and ahead. That is the reason why we created the Office for Innovation and has also appointed a chief scientist. She is first in the history of our organization, and also Professor Van Braun knows her very well. And it's trained by the breeding and work on the in the organization face the biotic stress, drought, salinity. So all this challenging situation for agriculture and farming, we needed an innovative approach by science and by new technology to solve it. FAO is generating knowledge and innovative products. This is happening by the deepening partnership, not only with government, also with academia, civil society, and private sector. We are already promoting collaboration work on the bio-innovation and the digital food and the culture that are targeted on the living no one behind. Take a look at the FAO flagship hand-in-hand initiative that is country-owned and country-led. We have also formed a new office for climate change, biodiversity, environment. That is coordinating FAO efforts towards a sustainable and circular economy. So we have several pillars that work together, from the natural science to the social science and to the data, big data science, and of course for the environment science. So we have to work closely cross sector, yeah, And that's a way we can address the complexity issues of the society and the environment. Because agricultural food system is not a simple sector, as I said so many times. Ladies and gentlemen, food for all is our aspiration. So we should have enough food to end hunger first. So, and then we should have produce more first, because we have more people. By then 2050, we will have another 1 billion more. We will reach 100 billion, 10 billion, sorry. And that will be 2.3, 2.4 billion more population to come. And so we have to improve the productive first. Food for different region and the specific demand, the balanced food is adequate to address the malnutrition and obesity. So, and then come the food diversity are the more and more important for the quality of a consumer's life. I was thinking and acting needed to go beyond the merely production of food, include food consumption, food quality, food culture, and all other aspects. We need to think about what the good food means. Food that feed the requirement, biologically need, and for the children, for the sick, for the obesity, for the consumers at a different age. We need to also look at the specific formula and the pattern. And our attention needed to go to scientific evidence-based food consumption, how to produce food, look at the environmental impact to change the production modules and method being contribute to the sustainable development. So food efficiency should revisit in terms of environmental impact, not only nutrients intake. Looking at the animal protein, for example, we need to examine feed productivity, output per unit in terms of environmental impact. Our attention is also geared towards the food chain, supply chain, and the cold chain, and the related challenges of eliminating food loss and waste, both on innovation and policy. This is why digital technologies and modern solutions such as e-commerce come into play as a way of transforming and rationalizing our food system. How to reuse the food residues for food, for feed, for fertilizer, because organic fertilizers and come also from the residue, food residues. And also for fuel, some food residue can become the new renewable fuel. Should be designed holistically. So I think we need to think about the feed context, addressing the pressing issues like AMR. So this afternoon, we will have a global press conference together with my colleagues from WHO and also the OIE. We will have a global leadership group on AMR. That's also a political movement and push, a promotion to address these issues. And also the residues, heavy metals, and the use of the additives, as well as the environmental pollution that goes with it. Exploring alternative methods for use of food residues, using more recycled byproducts to produce feed, increase the value of biomass, achieving environmentally friendly results. Look at the fibers. We needed to explore a natural way of developing new ones. That is a field where innovation is needed. Biofuel, biogas, and even bioreactors are another area of interest for the future. So bioreactor, for instance, not only for food and also for biomedicine, they have a big potential. Maybe we can plant crops not only for food, and it will be for the biomedicine. And that's bioreactor future industry. So agriculture needed to contribute to the fuel production using the grass or bush or faster growing, high efficient photosynthesis grass or crops. That also leads to biofuel. And non-edible parts of the crop, it used to be a residue, but now you can use as energy, bioenergy, biofuel. So we must develop more renewable or solar and or bioenergy-based production system. That's now the technology is there. Of course, we needed a package of solution to address the new production system based on renewable energy supply. I said from solar energy, from bioenergy, you can develop the solar greenhouse in the winter time, which has a very strong sunshine. It was not ideal environment for agricultural production, but now if with the new technology of new way of the production, with the new varieties, we can establish a completely new way of the agri-food systems. Look at the forestry. We needed to go beyond the limited view of it being just plant trees. It is also a source of food, feed, and fiber. Let's bamboo and rattan come to my mind. Just 2 days ago, we had a MOU with the International Organization of Bamboo and Rattan. FAO is studying and focus on that because the bamboo is very fast growing the trees you call, but it's somehow is a bush and somehow is a food crop because you can eat the young shoots of bamboo, and also it's a fuel. You can also it's very quick carbon CO2 fixation sequestration crop. So we needed to highlight the cultural heritage of the agricultural transfer and knowledge, indigenous heritage. And also we can learn from indigenous knowledge how to use the biodiversity as a biomedicine. Because a lot of indigenous people to use for generation to cure their specific disease and health problem. So I think we have to make it exploit the indigenous knowledge related to biodiversity, biomedicine, and biofood or functional food, you can say. That is there are another touristic value aspect of agricultural area that they were worth investing in a sophisticated complementary tool for descendant lab intensive job in rural development. So you can make biodiversity not only for food, feed, fuel, and also for tourists. So for fun, I should say, tourists not only for enjoyment and for fun and for science education. So you can know more crops, more food by visiting the rural areas, which produce the biodiversity food, or from the biodiversity to the food diversity. Agro-environment should be addressed in the man-made environment, including the wetland, like rice paddy field and aquaculture pond, reforesting for the ecosystem like bush and grass, installation of a semi-desert use of solar energy or greenhouse, animal shuttle for cattle, feed production side. So you can combine solar energy generation with animal husbandry, with horticulture. So that's a new way of the bioeconomy, completely different from traditional agriculture. That's lead us a bioeconomy where the economic value is paired with environmental sustainability. So please don't isolate any sector. Talk about it yourself or in your box. We have to jump out of box to look at how to bring together different sector, different small sector to the bigger picture by development of bioeconomy. When they combine the rice field, the rice farming, also we can use this wetland of a rice paddy rice field to nursery duck or fish, water vegetables in the rice paddy field, for example. This is agriculture at large with the 5F, which are food, feed, fiber, fuel, and friends. We need to link the biodiversity with food diversity, I said, as food diversity explored from biodiversity by science, especially by biotechnology. We also look at the integrated agri-food system into the environment as we do it in the urban and peri-urban environment with our Green City initiative. A holistic vision bring together the goal of the urban food agenda with the socio-economic, environmental, spiritual nexus. So agriculture is not only for socio-economic meaning and value or environment value, also it's It's bring the added value for enjoyment, spiritual enjoyment. We have the knowledge, tools, and approach to produce and use biomass sustainably. We need to combine this with the right policy, institution, capacity, governance, and investment to harness the potential of the sustainable bioeconomy for all. Let us trust, respect, keep our commitment to each other, grow, nourish, sustain together for better bioeconomy and a better world. So bioeconomic is our future, and we need a holistically coherent work together. I thank you. Thank you for Germany and my friend Julia, and also Professor Van Braun for your engagement, for your contribution. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Chu Dongyu. And Julia had to run off. The minister has some more engagements, and your good friend Joachim van Braun is basically next door, one of the few people who can actually attend this conference in person. And of course, we would have preferred to have had you here, but we all know that due to the pandemic, that is not possible. Thank you again for sharing your thoughts on how to feed the world through expanding the global bioeconomy with technological advances, R&D, and within the stipulated goals of our global goals, our SDGs, and of course for the health of the planet and the people. So here. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, we are still at the Global Bioeconomy Summit 2020, and you are listening now to some EduPods.
Hi, this is Sandra and Pascal, and we are the founders of Zero Bullshit. It is a sad fact that 1/3 of all produced food is being wasted. But what most people don't know, this doesn't only happen in households or in retail, but also during their production. You want an example? After the production of pumpkin seed oil, the ground seeds often end up as animal feed, or even worse, in the waste container. That's pretty sad, isn't it? But you know what's even sadder? Those leftovers are still rich in valuable proteins, vitamins, and minerals. So why shouldn't we use them for human consumption?
Exactly. And that is why we rescue those leftovers according to our maxim, use instead of waste. For our Rettercracker, we use 3 side streams of the food industry and turn them into a crispy and crunchy cracker. But this one does not only shine through its sustainability. With 30% protein and 10% fibers, our Rettercracker is comparable to the highly praised lentils or nuts. Plus, we use half of the salt compared to regular potato chips. Furthermore, we renounce on using allergens such as gluten and soy, as well as artificial additives. Instead, only organic ingredients find their way in the recycling optimized packaging.
Long story short, the Rettercracker is healthy for the planet and healthy for you. And you know what? There are more leftovers out there that are worth rescuing, and thanks to our bioeconomy and food science background, we already have some ideas in our head. We are Zero Bullshit, and we want more sustainability and less food waste in your supermarket shelf.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, and you're getting used to being shown publications. Now, this is also hot off the press, and it's the Global Expert Survey, Designing Sustainability Governance for the bioeconomy. We've already said that round about 60 nations around this globe have adopted strategies, and there are 3 people, 3 experts that have put this report together: Jan Berner, Thomas Dietz, and Carla Rubio, and they are with us now in order to present this particular report.
Dear Excellencies and colleagues, 2 years ago at the GBS 2018, the first global expert survey informed bioeconomy strategy development around the world. By now, countries have started implementing their strategies, and expert knowledge is needed to understand what works and what not in steering bioeconomic transformation towards a sustainable future. In the following 10 minutes, we will share selected findings of the 2020 edition of the Global Expert Survey, which was completed last month. The overarching questions we addressed with the help of experts from almost 50 countries were: how are we doing in promoting and regulating bioeconomic transformation, and what can be done to improve bioeconomy governance?
Our starting point is the vision of bioeconomy as a knowledge and technology-based opportunity to promote economic growth and social progress by decoupling development from increasing resource consumption and greenhouse gas emissions. Generally, we define governance as the process by which societies adapt their rules to new challenges. Specifically, effective governance frameworks for the bioeconomy need to assume 2 functions. First, they need to support bioeconomy companies to transform bio-based innovations into sustained economic success. That is what we call in the following enabling governance. Second, they must set regulatory boundaries for the bioeconomy to minimize potential conflicts among the complex set of SDGs, and that is what we call in the following regulatory governance.
The expert survey was structured in 3 main sections. The first section covered background information. The second section was designed as a follow-up to the 2017 survey and reassess whether expert views have changed on key topics, region-specific success stories, and priorities with respect to policies for the bioeconomy. The last section focused on the effectiveness and adequacy of enabling and regulatory governance in the experts' countries or sectors of operation. The online survey was sent out to over 5,000 experts, and about a third of the respondents from the first global expert survey also participated in the second round, which allowed us to construct a partial panel data set. The survey was sent out by email in early September and closed for data analysis in the first week of October. This map showed the distribution of the total sample by country. The 2020 sample covers 282 experts from 49 countries and 6 geographical regions. Most experts come from Europe and Germany in particular, while the second most represented region was Latin America and the Caribbean, followed by North America and Asia. The resurvey 115 experts distribute over 34 countries and the same regions.
Let's start by looking at the changes in participation, which dropped in Asia, Europe, and South America. We know from exchange with experts that the COVID-19 pandemic provoked a massive increase in online survey activity. So what we're seeing here is most likely a result of online survey fatigue. Our resurveyed sample of experts was first asked to revisit bioeconomy success stories that they had predicted back in 2017 and rate their probability at hindsight. The most frequent success stories were linked to clean energy provision, novel bio-based products, and circular waste management. At hindsight, experts were somewhat less optimistic with respect to bio-based energy solutions than in the case of the latter 2 items. Next, experts were asked to reassess a total of 29 policy measures that are summarized here under the 7 categories on the left. We find that today, experts attach somewhat lower priorities to promoting innovation infrastructure and demand-side policies than back in 2017. Many of these measures are nonetheless still high on the agenda. Importantly, though, experts attribute increasing importance to creating favorable economic conditions for thriving bio and circular economies. This includes, for example, bans on selected fossil fuel products and carbon taxes. Most of these policies have in common that they discourage problematic aspects of the fossil fuel economy or seek to internalize global externalities such as carbon emissions.
When looking at the full set of 2020 results, we find that governments worldwide have been using enabling governance mechanisms mainly to promote the supply side of their bioeconomies. They mostly supported research and development activities and set up training and capacity building programs. The only demand side oriented policy measure that was mentioned by more than half of the respondents was awareness raising, which can be classified as a comparatively soft policy instrument. Hence, the dominant models of enabling governance favor the emergence of bio-based innovation, while commercial success of bio-based products is still mainly left to market forces. Regulatory frameworks are needed to steer bioeconomic transformation towards sustainable outcomes. About 75% of the experts mentioned minimum environmental standards and international agreements. Similar frequencies were found for regulations on water and land use, as well as on food markets. Further, regulations on bio-based innovations, biodiversity access, and benefit sharing, as well as minimum social standards, were mentioned by little more than half of the respondents. Current bioeconomic transformations are thus not taking place in a regulatory vacuum. Instead, a number of laws and standards already exist that refer to the regulation of bio-based transformation. However, the mere existence of bioeconomy-related policy measures, as documented above, does not preclude governance gaps. Strikingly, the majority of experts attests medium to very low implementation effectiveness to all of the just mentioned enabling policy measures, except promoting research and development for bio-based innovation. This indicates potentially significant gaps between policy formulation and implementation on the ground. Especially demand-side policies, such as economic incentives for consumers, awareness raising, and taxation, show relatively low implementation effectiveness. Implementation gaps are similarly, if not more pronounced, for regulatory policy measures. For all specific regulatory policies in the list, a majority of experts rated implementation effectiveness at medium to very low. Improving regulatory effectiveness thus happens to be a major challenge for future bioeconomy policymaking. Ultimately, we were interested in a more general view of how the experts evaluate the overall adequacy of existing policies. Strikingly, only few experts fully agree that existing policies adequately address social, economic, or ecological sustainable development goals. At the same time, experts widely agreed that more international cooperation and coordination is needed. As a main takeaway, our results cast doubt on whether existing bioeconomy policies can put emerging bioeconomies on a pathway towards the future. So what can be done in the future? From our survey, we derive 7 key messages for policymakers. At the national level, set up private sector and government-funded schemes to improve access to capital for bioeconomy startups. Expand investments and improve economic governance to bring new bioeconomy products to the markets. Integrate stakeholders, align interministerial policy processes, and foster cluster building to improve policy coordination and harmonization across the bioeconomy. At the international level, develop stronger standards and improve politics on trade and development issues. Engage in knowledge transfer and institution building to overcome unequal distribution of institutional capacities between countries. promote green international finance schemes to support the diffusion of bio-based knowledge and technology. And finally, strengthen international mechanisms to internalize the environmental costs of the fossil fuel economy. We thank you for your attendance.
Yes, and thank you very much for you three, to the three of you that have just presented the report. Very helpful and, of course, ladies and gentlemen, to be found on the website, to be downloaded. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to go to our first plenary session today on day 2. For those of you who have been with us yesterday know that investing in the bioeconomy and being a session has 2 parts. One, the keynotes, which are going to start now, and the second part is going to be a plenary debate with several people where we also want your input. Right at the moment, we have a fantastic lineup for this keynote session, ladies and gentlemen, and all I'm going to say is a couple of high numbers. Shifting the trillions is the new word when you talk about climate finance, and it actually indicates that there is a hell of a lot of money out there in the financial system which isn't tapped yet and could be put to good use. And of course, what is good for climate change or climate action finance is also applying to the bioeconomy. Yesterday, we've heard another number. 4.5 trillion could be shifted if you did not continue in the linear fashion of the normal economy, but if you brought to bear the ideas and ideals of the circular economy to bear. But let me just put a little bit of water in the wine. When we look at the international financial system and when we look at the new kid in town, the green bonds, everybody's talking about them. However, it's only 4% of the money that is going around. So who are the key actors? What are the key solutions? How can we get more money into better development for the global bioeconomy? Those are the guiding questions for the keynotes. And let me just start with the lady who is going to be the first one to pick up the ball. Emily Chu is Global Head of Sustainability for Investment Manager at Morgan Stanley. But not only that, that would be already enough, but she's been the chairwoman of the steering committee of the Climate Action 100+, and that, ladies and gentlemen, was an investor initiative launched 3 years ago to ensure the world's largest corporate greenhouse gas emitters take necessary action on climate change. So a lady with a depth of knowledge, and she is going to share that with us now.
Hello, my name is Emily Chu, and I'm Global Head of Sustainability at Morgan Stanley Investment Management. And today I'm going to share with you a few insights around challenges and opportunities for bioeconomy and climate change investing currently happening in the investment industry today. I'm going to speak to this in terms of the 3 main implementation styles for sustainable investing. Firstly, if we think about exclusions as one way of implementing sustainability preferences in a portfolio, this means excluding companies based either on their controversial record, their controversial business involvement, or particular sustainability characteristics. In the case of climate, this is being implemented through the use of carbon intensity data mostly. But what we're also seeing is that we're starting to look for sources of data that can help us understand the biodiversity or other elements of the bioeconomy profile of companies. When it comes to exclusions, we're seeing to some extent the exclusion of companies based on controversial business practices, for example, pollution of waterways, or major kind of environmental disasters such as the oil spill in Siberia or the tailings dam collapse in Brazil. The second kind of prevalent way of integrating sustainability in investments is really this practice of ESG integration, that is, using the best available information around environmental, social, and governance practices and integrating it into the valuation of the companies. It's essentially a research-driven process. Now, our challenge here in the broader space of bioeconomy investing is that company disclosure is still lacking. We can do the best job in this area around climate change and carbon intensity. So, for example, we have around half of the world's largest companies. If you consider the constituents of the MSCI All Country World Index, or 2,800 of the world's largest companies, around half of those companies are now disclosing their carbon emissions data, which leads to the identification of outliers and the calculation of intensity metrics. So that's the best that we have. That's still only 50%. We are filling in the gaps when it comes to climate using calculations and educated assumptions about the business model. However, if we think about other forms of bioeconomy investing, whether it's forestry or water or waste management, there's still really a paucity of data that makes it very, very difficult. And the reasons why the data is so difficult is partly that from the company's perspective, it's very difficult to collect and disclose. It tends to be location specific. It tends to need some contextual data around those locations in order for it to be gathered and disclosed. And in the case of the world's largest companies with the most complex supply chains, they themselves may not have a ready-made list of sites that they can even use to guide the collection of this data. Secondly, the big block for us to implement in this area is a lack of standardization of data definition and of disclosure. So what investors are now looking to do is to use geospatial mapping to at least generate a risk profile of companies. If you can identify a sufficient number of locations, you can at least generate a risk profile to various types of biodiversity impacts. And both investors and companies are in the early stages of utilizing satellite data to assist with monitoring sites and in order to measure things like palm oil, forests, or the deforestation because of palm oil, or even methane gas leaks in the case of gas pipelines. Now, the third area of implementation for sustainable investing is essentially investing in solutions, or in some ways called impact-aligned or impact-oriented investing, where the measurable positive outcome of the investment is just as important as the financial return profile. Now, in the case of public markets, bonds and listed equities, we have the EU taxonomy that's being eventually developed that will define standards for the protection and restoration of biodiversity and ecosystems. What they have developed so far is a definition around climate change adaptation and mitigation. This is essentially the opposite of an exclusion methodology. It's an inclusion methodology. It's looking at the positive change characteristics or the positive revenues of companies involved in climate change mitigation and adaptation activities in order to define an investment universe or in order to tilt towards them in your inclusion methodology. So there's still a lot more to be developed there, particularly around data definitions for areas broader than climate, but we're seeing really meaningful progress now as the taxonomy project gets rolled out in Europe. Now, in the absence of easy implementation of sustainable investing tools around bioeconomy themes, what we can do in the meantime is use our influence as an investor to encourage companies to adopt stronger practices through engagement. So we are engaging with companies on better management of nature-based assets and inputs. We're doing this both as a shareholder and as a bondholder. And in the case of the bonds that we hold, we are engaging with companies to encourage them to actually issue more green labeled or sustainability labeled bonds, whereas the issuance of the bond and the payment of the coupon is actually tied to certain sustainability characteristics which are measured and reported on. So when we turn to some of the reasons why we're seeing more of the interest in the industry around bioeconomy investing and climate change investing, and why we're seeing a lot of innovation in this space, I would point to really kind of two key trends. One is that among the largest pension funds and sovereign wealth funds and public institutions that are the owners of capital and are the allocators of capital to asset managers like us, we're starting to see a small but influential group of these asset owners adopt net zero and climate goals. So in line with the science that underpins the Paris Agreement, we need to move the economy to a net zero status by 2050. And in order to be rapidly doing that, the finance system is being activated. Now, in order for us to reach this 2050 timescale, nature-based assets have been identified as critical, and in particular, the world's forests, which are already acting as an incredible carbon sink, playing an incredibly critical role in that area. If we look at the EU alone, the forests in the EU account for about 20% of that global forest carbon sink. Now, the EU's technical expert group, which is helping to advise and form the EU taxonomy, made the decision to include forestry in the climate mitigation component of the taxonomy based on the view that an increase in carbon sequestration from forests will be necessary to meet the 2050 net zero target. And so these trends are forcing more interest among the asset management community to serve this growing base of asset owners in this space through innovative funds. So we're starting to see the launch of nature-based asset funds. And on the corporate side, we're starting to see the launch of things like blue bonds and even more sustainability bonds that are linked to more innovation around protection of biodiversity and the bioeconomy. Now, finally, I think one really important innovation in the industry is the role of collaborative engagement. And I've been involved in a project called the Climate Action 100+, which is a global investor engagement initiative that I think holds some really important lessons for how this space could evolve in years to come. The initiative was formed as a 5-year initiative to address the goal of the Paris Agreement through engaging with the world's largest global carbon emitters in order to encourage them to adopt business models and targets that were in line with the goals of the Paris Agreement, ultimately net zero by 2050. And I think we have 3 key lessons that come out of Climate Action 100+ that could be helpful for us to think about other systemic bioeconomy failures and limits of the capital markets. We've had, with the Climate Action 100+, more than 500 investors sign up, more than 40 trillion in invested assets represented among the initiative. And we've seen en masse large numbers of companies start to adopt goals that are in line with the Paris Agreement. And it's accelerated in the last 3 years as the initiative has been operating. I think the 3 key lessons are keeping the objectives of the engagement easy to understand and universal for as many investors as possible to support. In the case of climate action, it was the adoption of targets, it was better disclosure aligned with the TCFD, and it was the improvement of governance structures around climate risk. Secondly, make the initiative multi-year. It takes time for investors to ramp up their engagement with companies, and it takes time for companies to respond and then to have annual reporting cycles to demonstrate how they are coming through on their commitments. And thirdly, it's really critical to have a benchmark that is objective, primarily based on publicly disclosed targets and data, which ties into the objectives of the engagement. And that's really critical for being able to determine the success of the engagement program as a whole. So I think that we have some really positive green shoots in the finance sector and in the investment sector in particular right now. We have the Task Force on Nature-related Financial Disclosures, the development of the EU's taxonomy standards in relation to climate change and biodiversity. We have the evolution of technologies that will enable greater surveillance beyond company disclosed data. And we have collaborative engagement happening in a much more powerful way than ever before. These are all encouraging signs that we will be able to move quickly as an investment community over the next couple of years to better manage bioeconomy risks. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Emily Chu, for getting us right into the issue and also opening up an umbrella of the diverse forms and shapes with which bioeconomy and, of course, climate change projects can be financed. And, of course, the classic instruments one would look to would be the big investment banks. And, of course, Luxembourg, the European Investment Bank, is one that one would look at. And all we can say is that halting the loss of biodiversity and adapting to climate change requires increasing investment in natural capital. We've just heard Emily Chu point out to that. The European Investment Bank and the European Commission have actually gone hand in hand and started a natural capital financing facility. So those are the steps in the direction that are very, very interesting to us. Talking to us now will be Werner Schmidt, who is the Director, Environment and Sustainable Territorial Development Department at the European Investment Bank, and having been with the EIB for such a long time, is this the new kid in town? Is this where everybody looks to? Is this a new sexy investment?
Good morning, everybody. It's a great pleasure to address you. And indeed, there is well, it's not a new kid in town, but it's certainly an interesting kid in town. I'll try to outline very briefly the role of the EIB Group, what we are doing on sustainable bioeconomy. And in fact, just to bring it into perspective a little bit, sustainable bioeconomy is obviously of strategic importance to the EIB. We are the Bank of the European Union, and actually we are the largest multilateral investment financial institution. Well, we are owned by the EU member states, and just to give you an idea about our lending volume, it's roughly 65 billion a year. Now, we've invested some 30 billion over the last years already in primary agriculture, forestry and fish production and the relevant value chains. And around 80% of this lending is actually to support farmers and small medium enterprises along the bioeconomy value chains. We have seen increasing activity in recent years, and we were able also to strengthen our lending with the help of a variety of tailor-made products and interventions. They include lending targets, established particularly for young farmers, acknowledging the need to support a generational changeover in agriculture. These loans were made available thanks to the European Fund for Strategic Investments, which many of you might know as the Juncker Plan or the Investment Plan for Europe. As of next year, InvestEU will replace the EFSI, and we are looking forward to putting InvestEU to work in the agriculture sector. Now, to span the case a little bit to the current pandemic, actually, which has not only changed our daily lives, but also the way EIB operates as an EU institution. And in fact, in face of the already visible economic effects of COVID-19, we work together with other European institutions to counter and alleviate clearly these effects. We've been temporarily broadened our eligibility criteria to include finance for working capital, in particular to address the working capital needs of businesses who are impacted by this crisis, including the farmers and including the bioeconomy scheme. With our COVID-19 response also includes a pan-European guarantee fund that enables the EIB Group to scale up its support for mostly small, medium enterprises in Europe, including those in the agriculture sector, providing up to 200 billion euros of additional financing. Now, as Emily already mentioned, yes, clearly the coronavirus has shaken our societies and a quick response from all of us, but we should not forget about the existential threat that climate change presents to the world. The growing population will demand an increase in agricultural production by 2050 by around 70%. And on the other hand, actually unabated climate change is expected to impact on yields, ecosystems, and cause decreased agricultural productivity in broad areas of the world, including the EU. But even if the average global temperature increase is contained at 1.5 degrees, humanity will need to adapt to climate change impacts, and specific measures are necessary to avoid or, if possible, revert further damaging expansion of agricultural activity into new high carbon, high biodiversity land. More than ever before, we will need to invest in projects that support specifically climate resilience and mitigation. In the context of the COVID-19 pandemic, we continue to rigorously support investments in green and sustainable recovery. Last week, our board of directors, which are the representatives of the EU member states, have, I think most of you or many of you might have heard about the Climate Bank Roadmap, which sets out in detail how we as the European Climate Bank support the objectives of the European Green Deal and sustainable development outside the Union. In the decade to come, we aim to support 1 trillion of investment for climate action and environmental sustainability, with 50% of our lending going towards climate and environmental sustainable operations. We also will be Paris aligned, and our investments, as Emily have mentioned that already, will be Paris aligned as of next year. So strong support for the sustainable bioeconomy projects is an essential part of this historic goal. The EIB provides financial support to these sectors along the whole bioeconomy value chain, as well as to circular bioeconomy, including primary sector of agriculture, forestry, and fisheries together with the value chains. Indeed, the bioeconomy, for example, through afforestation and sustainable forest management, can sequester huge amounts of greenhouse gases at relatively low cost. We are already one of the biggest financiers of the forestry sector worldwide. And just to give you an idea, over the last 5 years, we supported forest value chain investments with close to 6 billion euros. Our financing therefore helps to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and substitute energy-intensive materials with renewable and recyclable materials. But our support to sustainable bioeconomy goes much further. It is much broader. So to unlock the production potential in a sustainable and resource-efficient manner. We've been investing in sustainable agricultural land use, production of biomaterials, low-carbon pathways by the agri-food forestry industry, but backing farmers and small-medium enterprises, cooperatives, the public sector, and so forth. But also research and development, and some of the colleagues have mentioned that already before, for instance, in seed, but also improved fertilizer use is very relevant under the objectives of the EU Green Deal to enhance actually plant tolerance to biotic and abiotic stress. As a result, they contribute to securing agricultural productivity with reduced environmental footprint and biodiversity impact. Together with partner banks and investment funds, we support circular economy projects. And I would like to give you one example, namely the European Circular Bioeconomy Fund. This fund, supported thanks to a guarantee provided by the European Commission under the InnoFin mandate, provides access to finance in form of equity, debt, or quasi-equity to innovative and early-stage circular bioeconomy companies and projects to scale up the production of new materials and technologies. Innovation and the bioeconomy will play a key role in finding alternatives to fossil-based fuel products if we are to meet the climate challenge. Another key example I would like to share with you is the Land Degradation Neutrality Fund. The first fund investment focused on a specific sustainable development goal, namely SDG 15.3. This provides long-term finance and technical assistance in developing countries for shifting the trend from land degradation and unsustainable land use to rehabilitation, restoration, and sustainable land use. Target impacts include obviously improved food security, livelihoods, climate action, but also enhanced biodiversity and ecosystem services. As you can see, there are many ways to support the EU Green Deal objectives through financing investments in sustainable bioeconomy. Indeed, last year, half of EIB's direct financing for bioeconomy already supported climate action orientations. But yet, there's more that we all can and must do over the coming years, both from a mitigation and also very importantly for bioeconomy from an adaptation perspective. The transition to a circular and sustainable bioeconomy is Europe's response to today's key environmental challenges. It will help us to promote sustainable production and reuse of natural resources. It will reduce the dependence on fossil resources. It will also have a job impact, i.e. develop new jobs and revitalize industrial production in the EU, and it will promote rural economy. Such transition may be challenging, but it is inevitable. From an economic view, it makes total sense. And if we don't act now, the costs in future will be much higher. Thank you for the opportunity to discuss this topic with you today. Thanks for your attention, and all of it. Enjoy the rest of the session. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Schmidt. And I wish we had the opportunity to talk a little bit more about what's coming up and what's in the pipeline at the EU right at the moment about deforestation-free supply chains and the European responsibility. But maybe we do that another day. So thank you very much, I suppose, in the direction of Luxembourg. And from Luxembourg, we turn our eyes to Israel. And the lady that is going to talk to us now, Ipshita Mandal-Johnson, is a real innovator. She is the founder and CEO of Global Biofund, and she's also the president of Global Biotech Revolution. All in all, it's a not-for-profit that globally connects biotech think tanks, industrial leaders and research pioneers to young bio leaders of tomorrow. Because after all, small companies might have great innovative power, they might not have enough money, and they might not be able to spend that much time actually searching for investors. And the network that she has founded, that Ipshita has founded, has grown rapidly. Today, more than 500 young biotech leaders engaged in biotech VIPs internationally. And she is actually also creating another summit, the GAP Summit in Cambridge. Now, let's have her share her experience and how she can actually nurture globally diverse entrepreneurs to build solutions for a sustainable bioeconomy.
Good morning, or at least it should have been if we were all together today in Berlin. Despite this, every crisis brings an opportunity, and this one has brought our discussion today on investing in the bioeconomy to a globally connected audience. 5 years back, the world had also convened on the UN Sustainability and Development Goals. And Professor Jeffrey Sachs at the 2015 Global Bioeconomy Summit highlighted the 7 SDGs that are directly impacted by the work we do in the bioeconomy across poverty alleviation, health and well-being for all, food security and sustainability, and addressing climate change in both marine and terrestrial environments. 5 years later now, we are in a world facing multiple crises at the same time, with climate change, global health, with the COVID-19 pandemic, a sharp decrease in biodiversity, and economic recessions. However, we are also in an opportune time, with a new global leadership surfacing focused on a green economic recovery. In this talk today, I'd like to highlight the role of globally diverse entrepreneurs to meet these goals, especially with a sustainable bioeconomy. Firstly, I'll discuss the intergenerational debates needed, some which have been led by the global biotech revolution. Secondly, the rise of impact investment and gender lens investment through funds such as the Global Biofund. And thirdly, discuss the value of building global platforms like this and key questions we need to reflect to achieve real impact through these activities. Almost 10 years back, we identified a wide gap between the public and private sector leaders of today discussing global challenges, and millennials who were youth champions, scientists, and young professionals who are building solutions towards the bioeconomy. With founding Global Biotech Revolution, our team created its flagship platform, the GAP Summit, an intercultural and intergenerational summit at which 100 selected leaders of tomorrow convene each year and challenge each other as well as the current leaders of today across the system, from academic leaders, industry professionals, and policymakers. The summit is focused on discussing key gaps or challenges that the next generation will spend their careers trying to solve across research and innovation gaps, people and skill gaps, regulatory and commercialization gaps, amongst many others. There's also a bio-entrepreneurship competition with the Voices of Tomorrow, in which global teams define a specific local bioeconomy problem and propose an innovative solution towards it. Over the last 6 years, the GBR not-for-profit has identified 600 leaders of tomorrow, built 120 venture teams, and scaled 18 companies. This has been kindly supported by more than 70 organizations, including the World Health Organization, UN, Nature, BBC, Bio, and various pharma and tech companies. Insights from this platform brings me to the second area of accelerating the need to support these entrepreneurs with structures and investors, helping scale these ventures to real impact to the SDGs that are relevant. Our societies are on a fundamental shift towards demanding more equality and expecting both governments and businesses to deliver on environmental and social impact goals. Along with large cap firms and banks, venture capital also needs to evolve from short-term shareholder returns to long-term stakeholder value. Because of the traditional Silicon Valley VC mindset, mainstream tech entrepreneurs also are often limited in their aspirations to billion-dollar unicorn valuations. The bio-entrepreneurship ecosystem across health tech, ag tech, and clean tech has an opportunity to build businesses focused on more comprehensive value creation. Impact funds, such as the Global Bio Fund, have emerged over the last 15 years to measure social and environmental performance with the same rigor as financial performance. As of June 2020, the Global Impact Investing Network estimates the current market size of impact investing at around $715 billion. Additional to the previously listed 7 SDGs, SDG 5 of gender equality and diversity is a key enabler to our process. Diversity across all aspects is an asset to a business. It has been found women place a greater focus on ESG impact, which is increasingly demanded by both global consumers and investors. At Global Bio Fund, we invest in the intersection of diversity and bioeconomy impact. We are building innovative measures to measure entrepreneurship success towards the SDGs with metrics such as net impact value and an impact rate of return, developed by Harvard Business School and Columbia University. Our goal is to have invested at least $100 million in the next 10 years to diverse early-stage founders, scaling bioeconomy solutions across the 3 subsectors of health and well-being, food and agriculture, and energy and environment. To support them, we are launching Global Bio Accelerator next year as the world's first seed accelerator to provide open resources to easily access technical business knowledge, competitive financial capital, social networks, and human capital through a collaborative digital ecosystem. We are building this with multiple global partners across 170 organizations, including leading funds, corporates, foundations, and academic institutions. Lastly, I'll step back to observe the value of building such platforms and key questions we need to reflect more deeply on to scale these bioeconomy ventures. In a previous keynote by Professor Sachs, he had brought up the need for interdisciplinary international collaborations across scientists, economists, and institutions to build solutions with systemic outcomes in their very mindset. Ecosystems like the Global Biotech Revolution, Global Bio Fund, and this Global Bioeconomy Summit are the need of the time to bring together a diverse community to address the SDGs in partnership. We still need creative problem solving on how we provide patient growth capital to bio entrepreneurs for them to focus on real impact over quick financial returns. And also how we efficiently measure impact across multiple frameworks that exist, from targets and SDGs, ESG frameworks, and independent fund methodologies. Our global post-pandemic recovery needs active support for a new breed of bio-entrepreneurs with environmental and social impact values in the very DNA of their business. Through such discussions like today's plenary, we inspire more investors and entrepreneurs to follow Andre Hoffman's model of planet, people, and then profit. I'd like to thank today the Global Bioeconomy Summit steering group to focus on this critical topic of investing in the bioeconomy. I'm honored to share this stage with bio leaders of today and tomorrow, who I personally am continually inspired by. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It takes somebody to think in new terms to actually nurture globally diverse entrepreneurs and building a sustainable bioeconomy by doing that, by enabling and bringing about financial mechanisms to help them. Let's turn to in the first place, different sounding issue. Let's talk about houses. Let's talk about housing. In the past millennia, houses were made of wood and straw, and today, of course, concrete is the norm. However, it has, of course, apart from the good aspects in building, it has really terrible effects on the environment. And so new thinking is coming, and it is coming from Nigeria. Kolawole Adisa Olonade has actually brought about some new ideas. It's an innovation. It could be a revolution. He has found a way in which he turns bio-waste to bioresources and thereby enables sustainable construction. Now, he is going to explain all about that. For me, it only remains to say that with his ideas that he's been putting into place, he's won many awards, also by the German Federal Ministry of Education and Research 2 years ago, and he has also been awarded for the project Low Carbon Livelihoods. And what exactly it is, he is going to share with you now.
Thank you. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Kolawole Adisa Olonade from the Department of Civil and Environmental Engineering, University of Lagos, Nigeria. I appreciate the organizer for inviting me to be part of this Global Bioeconomy Summit. In the next 8 to 10 minutes, I shall be talking to you on converting bioresources, bio-waste to bioresources, for use in sustainable construction, and I shall be presenting a case of cassava peels, which is one of the major projects that we are currently we are rounding up against next year. Concrete is a major construction material because there is no yet alternative to concrete for many benefits that are accrued to it. But other materials that are also used for construction industry, if you look at this figure, we have steel, we have asphalt, we have timber, we have glass, we have several other construction materials. But the energy required in producing this concrete or these materials, they are enormous. They are not sustainable. They will pose potential threats to our environment, and they are also not sustainable. In terms of properties, they cannot compete with concrete. Concrete is consumed in large quantity that it is next to water, though it has a low CO2 emission on its own compared to all other construction materials. But if you look at the enormous, the cumulative amount of CO2 produced as a result of large quantity of concrete that is being consumed, it is a singular contributor of between 5 to 10% of the global CO2 emission. So this, you cannot continue to continue in this way. And apart from CO2 emission, there is also disruption of ecosystem. The material is not renewable because you mine natural resources, and they also compete with other economic value, especially land in African countries, where the major business they do there is agriculture, and you need that to do this. And when you mine this land become useless for agricultural production. So in sustainable construction, what is required is to consume less of natural resources and to try as much as possible to reduce emission. Unfortunately, there is still no alternative material that could completely replace cement in a commercial term. But what is required, the effort everybody is making, and that everybody must also key in, is to produce as much as possible to make concrete to be greener. Because the more greener it is, the greener the concrete is, the better for our environment. There are a lot of abound bio-waste in our environment, especially in Africa, where the major business is agriculture. Large quantity of bio-waste materials are produced. And when they are produced, they are dumped, they are burnt, and they become another challenge to the environment. So in construction area, there are different areas where we can develop this, we can utilize these materials once they are processed. You can use as a binder, where we use resource ash, we have to sugarcane, straw ash. You can also use as filler. You can also use them as aggregate in concrete, especially palm kernel shell. Then also for fiber reinforcing, we use coconut fiber and several other agricultural fibers, which could be incorporated in concrete to increase their the energy assumption, and also to increase their tensile strength and their flexural strength. Then also bio-waste material could also be deployed, could also be used as rheology enhancer, like we use cassava starch and several other agricultural resources. And apart from this, you can also generate energy. It can be generated, which could also be used in producing electricity. These are some of the major areas where this bio-waste will be used in construction industry. As a case study of cassava peels, cassava is like yam. They also call it in manioc. Manioc. It is a food for almost about 500 people in the world, and about 80% of the people in South Africa depend on cassava. In South Sub-Saharan Africa depends on cassava for food. It is a perennial crop. It grows almost in every land. So that is why you can see that the production of cassava is even moving closer to the dry areas. You can see a lot of countries in Africa, they produce cassava. About 60% of cassava production in the world is produced in Africa. Presently, Nigeria is the largest producer of cassava in the world, which is contributing to about 35% of what is produced in Africa. So Currently, these are value chain that we have in cassava. For cassava, you can produce cassava starch, you can produce cassava chips and pellets, and then it will also be consumed directly. But in the course of producing all of this, because all this cannot be produced without peeling cassava. When they are peels, a lot of peels are produced. In some production, hops are also generated. In an attempt to utilize this, they are used as in animal feed, they are used in compost, they are used as mushrooms. The technology to do for converting peels to compost and mushrooms are very, very expensive compared to what is the material is. And the only thing that is required is for the animal feed. Because cassava does not have large quantity of, it has a very low protein content. So there is a limit to which they can be used for animal feed. So as a result of this, because the peels are underutilized, that's why this large quantity of cassava peels are generated. So this is where our project comes in. We want to find a means of utilizing this cassava peel, and under the German African Innovation Incentive Award, which is being sponsored by German Ministry of Education and Research, myself and my colleague, Dr. Schmidt, was given this award to convert this material to this waste material to bioresources for use in construction industry. This is the new value chain that we have developed for it, which could also be deployed to any other materials and then could be extended to any part of the world. So cassava, before it is used, you peel it. The starch attached to the peel could be extracted to produce the construction chemicals. They could also be used as fuel in a kiln to burn brick, and then the ash that is developed from it will also be used as replacement for cement. At least about 20 to 25% of cement can be replaced with this cassava peel ash, which translates into reducing the amount of CO2 that is generated into the environment. But there is issue here. When you burn cassava peel, then there are also emission air. These techniques we have developed to see how do we reduce the emission that is being produced from the bio-waste burning. There are two techniques. You can use pyrolysis plant. Once the pyrolysis plants, we generate heat, which could also be used for chemical industry, and then could also be used in generating heat for electricity. Then we also use vertical kiln, where we burn brick. Brick could be used, and then the ash from the brick, the ash from here will also be used as a pozzolanic cementitious material. So this is a very unique approach to convert most of this bio waste to bioresources. Apart from those techniques that is being developed, there are several other benefits that could be derived from approaching this. We can reduce the landfill, because we can also reduce pollution. Then we also reduce the disamenity effect caused by most of this waste. Now the economic balance, the techniques will develop new employment for youth, which they can utilize, and then it attracts more participation. It also reduces the rural-urban drift migration, most especially because most of these wastes are produced in Africa. There will also be to facilitate Africa's regional and economic integration. Currently, there is a group in African countries, of researchers from African countries, and some of our colleagues from Europe. We are developing, we have a technical committee of Ireland that is developing most of these bio-waste materials for use in construction industry. This also translates into a lot of educational values. Students are being trained, curriculum are being developed, workshops on bioconcrete are also being staged. And then this will also enhance capacity development for rural dwellers, who are mainly women and youth. So in the course of this, we intend to also produce a concrete structure and which will be studied, and then that will also give some level of confidence for entrepreneurs to come in and develop these techniques in a large quantity. So in conclusion, bio-wastes are available in abundance, especially in Africa, but unfortunately they are grossly underutilized. Greater opportunities are abound in the bio-waste. Converting bio-waste to resources requires concerted efforts, so everybody must get involved. We utilize bio-waste to guarantee sustainable construction, and this will also facilitate regional and international collaboration. So in acknowledging, I would like to acknowledge the Federal Ministry of Education and Research, our chairman, who sponsored most of the works that we have, who have sponsored this project, and also my host institution in Germany, BAM, my university, and my colleague in developing this technique is Dr. Wolfram Schmidt. Once again, thank you so much for this opportunity, and I believe that with this presentation, we can always utilize bioresources, bio-waste or bioresources. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, and we hope, of course, that your ideas can be transferred to Germany and to Europe, and thereby help greening our building industry as much as resource efficiency is, of course, also a factor. And now, ladies and gentlemen, having done the keynotes and having laid out a red carpet, I would like to invite you to stay for the debate on the financing of the global bioeconomy.
Greetings. My name is Katsuhiko Takata. I am a professor at Akita Prefectural University. I am also the CEO of a university-initiated venture company. Today, I would like to share some public relations material pertaining to our company. Our company is named the Forest Product Bioeconomy Promotion Agency, BPA for short. It was founded in 2018. BPA's objectives are outlined below. Firstly, to promote bioeconomy based on Japanese nature, culture, and history. Secondly, to socially promote the use of environment-friendly wood-like products made from new type of forest-based materials developed at the university. We believe that instead of depleting fossil resources, the utilization of forest-based products, especially wood, should be taken very seriously, not just to encourage bioeconomy in Japan, but also to revitalize the country's densely forested rural regions. The next slide positions the company between forests and end users and places it between the needs of industry and the seeds of solutions proposed by academia. The flow of forests to end users may be observed in downward vertical movement demonstrated in the middle of the slide, and our company is central to this progression. We will consult with industry and academia about their needs and seeds, and will try to encourage collaborative research and development between the two sectors using a new type of the environment-friendly forest-sourced material to generate novel products and markets. This slide displays a sample of our brand new forest-sourced material. You can see a small piece of wood akin to laminated veneer lumber, but the veneer is extremely thin at just 0.4 millimeter, and 25 veneers are laminated using a considerably small amount of glue. This material is remarkably flexible and is very easy to bend and twist. Applying this technology, we can produce high-performing plywood-like based materials capable of three-dimensional deformation. I hope the new wood-based material I have presented to you today has impressed you. It is also my hope that you will soon see new products made with these strange but interesting materials. Thank you very much for your kind attention. I will see you in the future.
Investing in the bioeconomy, and now we're going to debate. But before I introduce the panelists, and each and every one of them could actually fill half an hour's talk, I would like to invite you, ladies and gentlemen, to participate in our poll, because the question is out there. We want more money in the right way for the bioeconomy, for the global bioeconomy, but who can actually do that? Who is responsible? Is it governments? Is it industry and business? Is it civil society and the public? And forgive me, I just have to do a quick... be astonished by the way that right at the moment the graph is looking. The more people are participating, the more people will actually then shift the balance, ladies and gentlemen. And with that, whilst you're doing that, and would you please do that for the next couple of minutes, we would like to introduce our panelists, and we have a fantastic lineup. Let's turn to Pablo Nardone, he is bioeconomy advisor at the Ministry of Science, Technology and Innovation in Argentina, and has actually introduced an Argentine bioeconomy schedule, and he's the director of this virtual program there, and that is carried out by the Ministries of Science and Technology, Agriculture, Livestock and Fisheries, and the Buenos Aires Cereal Exchange. So quite a bit to do, and you seem to be quite an influencer. Benjamin Simmons is the founding head of the Green Growth Knowledge Partnership, and if you ever visit their website, you will get to know anything that you want to know about how to grow our economy, our global economy into a green fashion. And so happy to have you on board, Benjamin. You've had many other things, but maybe for the discussion now, it's quite important to know that you did coordinate the establishment and implementation of the economics of ecosystems and biodiversity earlier, and you involved more than 500 experts in view of the collaboration aspect and questions that we are going to talk about. Ray Dirani is the lead of the Sustainable Finance team at WWF UK, and your team, Ray, is focusing mainly on spatial finance, policy and regulatory work on climate and environment, as well as broader systems change in global finance. And one of the aspects that has not been prescribed, but I really want to know from you, how do you bring bankers, how do you bring finance people to understand what is out there and what are the needs? That's a question for later, of course. I'd like to introduce Michal de Veer. She's co-founder and general managing partner at Rimonim Agro VC, and you have you're a serial investor, not just once. You founded many companies. So looking back at all your expertise, you have expertise in business, finance, technology, medicine, you name it, anything that's to do with the bioeconomy, you've got it. We say hello to Thailand again, and Kittipong Promwong is the president of the Office of National Higher Education, Science, Research and Innovation Policy Council there. Hello, sir. For you, it must be late afternoon, and it's wonderful to have you on board. You've actually played an important role in the development and reform of the national innovation system in Thailand, and therefore you will share your views and your experience with us on that. Chris Fall, last but not least, from the US. Sir, you must have gotten up very early, or you've never gone to bed, whatever it is, as the director of the Department of Energy's Office of Science. You've been actually in this office since May last year, and maybe for some people in Europe who might not know, the Office of Science supports basic research in the physical science and is responsible for 10 of the 17 DOE national laboratories. So quite a big responsibility. And with that, I would like to start our round. And let me remind you, ladies and gentlemen, that your first answer can be a tad longer, but 3 minutes would be sort of the maximum. Michal, with all your experience and with looking at also the venture capitalist area and system in Israel, what is driving investment behavior in the bioeconomy, and what are options to accelerate investments?
Good morning, good afternoon, good night. I don't know how to start even, but I wish I could be there with you, but we are all in the Zoom land right now. So thank you for inviting me over to speak at your panel. Well, my name is Michal, and I come from Israel. I'm in Israel right now, and I'm general managing partner of Rimonim, which is an VC that invests in early technologies that are addressing global food shortage. Now, you know, the COVID story crisis has changed a lot of the way we act, the way we work, and also the way we invest. But the issue of food shortage has been always there, and it's been more and more and more severe lately. And the Nobel Peace Prize was awarded this year for the UN program for fighting hunger globally. And I think that what we see right now, and maybe just us here, I think that the crisis has caused us to look back to basic. I mean, back to health and back to food security and food safety. And it also taught us a lesson about how global this world is, and whatever we are facing here, I'm sure that our colleague in Thailand or in the US or in Germany, we are all looking at the same problems right now. And when we look at problems regarding investments, especially for early stage, it's been always very difficult to raise funds for early stage. And food and agri was somehow behind, and also digital health and other issues. They were slightly behind if we looked at high-tech deals and new mobile technologies and etc. And what I'm realizing right now with my small ecosystem is that people are looking into investments in the field of what really matters now. And that is more into health, and this is more into agri-tech and food tech. And this is what we are here to talk about, the bioeconomy. And, you know, I come from Israel, and we have always been the startup nation. We have always been very busy with the early stage things. But the COVID crisis has also caused us a kind of, you know, and advancing the technology into, if we needed, for example, 2 years to install a new technology with the COVID, it goes much faster if we are dealing with the right things. And so that's mainly my experience right now. And I think this is an Israeli experience, and this is what you were asking me to talk about. But I have a strong gut feeling that my colleagues here globally share the same experience about what people are looking at right now. And later on, since you only gave me 3 minutes, later on I can speak more about how we do it and how we change the way we invest.
It's lovely that you stick to time, because then we have a little bit more of a dynamic discussion. So, Ray Dirani, how can new norms and standards for sustainable finance contribute to incentivizing bio-based markets? I mean, we have new sustainability indices, we have the ESG metrics, and we have accounting innovation. But if you could sort of, in your short time, also tell us how you tell bankers that there is something called bioeconomy, and that, yes, please, they should take account of that just as much as of climate change.
Yeah, good question, and good morning, everybody. Hope we can do this in person at some point when the situation allows. Yeah, to pick up on the question, I mean, standards are super important, and increasingly they need to be aligned to the science. So there's a proliferation of standards, but actually we need science-based kind of alignment to those. That's quite important. And there is quite a difference between ESG and sustainability, as I think the audience may know. Without going into too much detail, ESG could be a good starting point, but sustainability is a much broader and all-encompassing term, and that's where the bioeconomy can be brought in, because ESG is quite process-oriented and more backward-looking, whereas sustainability is about values and norms, and also how do we align ourselves within a one-planet condition. And I think to really integrate bioeconomy, we need to have the finance sector relook at the whole asset allocation model and the investment process, and actually integrate bioeconomy into that. And I think that's possible. Certainly there's lots of education and cross-learning that needs to happen between departments and areas within financial institutions, but we're beginning to see more interest in this area as well. And I think ultimately it's mainstream capital that needs to align itself to the bioeconomy. So within a large investment house or a large bank, it's not about creating a niche green product on the side. It's actually about aligning the entirety of the business model around the only planet we have, and aligning investment processes where the bioeconomy and circularity can come into the whole way of doing things. So it is a bit ambitious, but I think if we aim at that level and we have science-based standards and targets integrated, we can actually achieve something quite different and something that really supports people and planet and addresses the kind of climate and nature emergency which we are facing. And we really only have kind of this decade to really get moving properly on.
You still haven't told me how you talk to bankers. I mean, having been one yourself, how do you convince them? How do you make them aware that there are, as I said, new worlds out there?
Yeah, sure. Just quickly on that. I mean, they do pay attention to policy and regulation and reputational risk, which all of these are going in this direction, as we know. But I think the most startling thing, perhaps, is that if I go back to when I was within a bank, the sort of war on talent in terms of staff within the institution is so important, attracting top talent and also customers. And increasingly, customers and staff are demanding from the finance industry a response to these emergencies and a response to how we kind of actually holistically deal with integration of environment and economy together. So the confluence of all those factors mean that they're beginning to listen, and clearly it's a different language, and there needs to be education brought in. We need, bioecologists talking to economists. We need financiers talking to conservationists, et cetera, But I think the backdrop now, given all these factors together, is really strong, and the conversations are beginning to happen.
I think you've just opened the door for many more conferences there, but it sounds like it's an outside-in push for innovation. Kittipong Prongwon, the question that you have already familiarized yourself with is how best can innovation ecosystems be organized for bioeconomy development? And it would be lovely if you could sort of refer also to your experience and how you made things change.
Thank you very much, Chair, and good evening, everyone. Yes. In Thailand, we look at the bioeconomy. Actually, we extend it to, we call it biocircular and green economy, in short BCG, which comprise of 4 sectors, including food and agriculture. The second is bioenergy, biochemical and biomaterials. The third is medical and wellness, and then the fourth is tourism. In terms of innovation, I think we realize that bioeconomy products is a kind of long-term and long-time development. So there are a lot of risk for the private sector to do this. The government helped them in several aspects, including in terms of market. In market, the government subsidized some of the products produced from bio-based bio-based product, including, for example, producing electricity from waste or some other use of bio-based materials in Thailand. The government also have innovation procurement for bio-based product as well. But I think what is most important also involved in terms of research and development. In Thailand, before, we do not provide money directly to the private firms. But this time, because we realize that in bioeconomy, it needs to help them to reduce risk. So the National Committee on Science Technology also have some new rules that the government can provide the money to the private firm directly, and that could help reduce the risk for them. Also, we develop infrastructures for private firm, especially SME, that do not have a capability to invest in large infrastructure by themselves. For example, pilot plant or biorefineries. So this the government also provide help to them. The last but not least, I think in terms of how to facilitate the private sector to do business without difficulties, that would be the most important one. So we did a number of reform in terms of deregulation and re-regulation to support the bioeconomy. For example, in terms of waste transport from some part of from some area to another area before we cannot do it. We are still trying to solve this kind of problem by changing the law. That's an example of what we are doing in Thailand in terms to support innovation, especially ease of doing innovation.
Thank you very much. As we've already said yesterday, Thailand has made this incredible push forward towards the bio-circular and green economy. Chris, with everything that's going on in the US right at the moment, let's sort of not touch upon the climate change aspect or climate action aspect, but really focus on the bioeconomy. How can governments, and in particular, of course, the US government, steer investments to foster the innovation in the bioeconomy?
Thanks, Connie. And what's going on? I don't. Thanks.
Does anybody know what time it is?
Yeah. Thanks for having me. It's a great panel and a great program, and I really do appreciate the invitation for the Department of Energy and my government to be part of this. I do want to just briefly recognize and thank Mary Maxson, who is a key delegate, a part of the Department of Energy family and a key delegate to your community over decades, and has worked hard to keep the U.S. engaged in the global bioeconomy conversation. Look, when we talk about steering investments, in my country, we get a little bit nervous. You know, we really have a bias against this idea of picking winners by the government through, you know, the weight of our investment and the power of the government. But there are, you know, many ways that governments, and our government does support the bioeconomy. And a big one is support for large and unique, say, facilities and infrastructure and capabilities. You know, modern biology is no longer, you know, folks with incubators or plant racks in a garage someplace. That we love the idea of innovation. We want to support investigators large and small and companies large and small, but you know, modern biology, we like to see what's going on and understand what's going on. So structural biology is a big part of that, and X-ray light sources, for example, neutron sources, cryo-EM facilities. These, by and large, certainly at the level of a synchrotron, are not things that individual companies are going to build. Individual universities are going to build. Certainly, startup companies are not going to build and own. Supercomputers, right? We now use supercomputers for, yes, the structural biology, structural experiments, you know, computer experiments. We can talk about that. Genomics, data analytics, increasingly powered by AI and machine learning. This is, you know, supercomputers are generally not something at least a startup are going to invest in. So those are some examples. There are new areas of technology like nanoscience that intersects with biology. So in our country, we've built a series of nanoscience centers similar to these user facilities. And of course, outside of biotech, we have Earth observatories. So my department is responsible for a series of facilities across the world that monitor the atmosphere. There are other agencies like NASA in our country that build satellites to observe the Earth, agriculture, and so forth. And so governments can and should do this, and we do. But I would say, other ways are to invest in basic research and education in things like convergence, this is something we do, bringing together, training people to bring together the disciplines, physics, math, computational work, in addition to biology. This is the essence of next generation biology. And then to bring people together in new ways in supporting, yes, pre-competitive research in teams. And that's a little bit different than picking winners or allocating funding that way. An important thing that governments around the world can do always as an administrator of science is predictable, stable and predictable funding. It doesn't matter often how much or how little, it's what we can rely on in order to build companies and so forth. And then finally, I would say, careful thought to what the regulatory environment is for biosciences and bioinnovation. Obviously, we can make it much harder or easier for investigators and companies to get started and to grow by the actions of government. So I'll leave it there.
Thank you very much. I think you might have sort of noticed my hand movement, like sort of urging you to come to a close after not just 3 minutes. So let's just sort of keep to the 3 minutes aspect. And with that, I'd like to talk to turn to Pablo. In your biography, I've already mentioned that you've started a lot of teaching aspects, that sort of the curriculum on bioeconomy has been more or less drawn up by you, and you're now sort of overseeing everything. So if we want to get traction on bioeconomy, of course, we need the people, therefore we need the training, and we need the capacity building. How do you finance it? I mean, is that sort of everybody's looking to the government, or is that something that you could also do by independent institutions? What is your experience?
Good morning. I'm honored to participate in such an important event. I believe that in order to ensure the incorporation of entrepreneurs and investors into the new market, we must have a comprehensive view of the multiple aspects of the new biobusiness. In terms of commercial and facility management, it's necessary to know different fields simultaneously, such as biology, engineering, legal matters, economic, etc. It's allowed to address solutions to the various problems that business development often show, especially when working with living organisms. They usually offer different behavioral variables. Generally, these profiles are trained on the job, with the resulting cost. An academic training with a holistic perspective would shorten both the cost and time frame very much, allowing much faster progress and adjusting to market growing demands. These new professional training should include the awareness of entrepreneurs and investors, as well as politicians, who must be fully aware of the problem, situation, needs, scientific and technological capabilities, environmental benefits, economic impacts, public opinion, tax benefits, linked, of course, to the biomarket. On the other hand, the entire investment chain of the venture capital industry needs to be developed much further. In general, the alternative of pre-seed investors, such as accelerator, company builders, and similar formats, need to grow. These investors are the ones who help projects take the first step in the market, achieve their first prototype, and can have a clear offer for a next round of investment. Beyond the venture capital industry, there is a private equity industry that could represent opportunity for emerging bioeconomy companies. In short, this new vision need to be included in training program. This would allow venture to evolve from the primary sector, for example, the traditional agribusiness, to become the intersection of very different activities and new biobusiness.
Well, thank you very much for sticking to your time. And for you, by the way, you didn't have to get up too early to be with us. I think it's sort of, coffee drinking time in Buenos Aires right at the moment. Benjamin, closer to home, I've already sort of advertised your platform to everybody who is listening and watching us now. And you definitely need to go and have a look at the Green Growth Knowledge Platform and the partnership. But you have done a lot of things that involved collaboration, but also quite a bit of money. So the question is, those decisions that we all need to make or need to take others along to make in the right way. How do your knowledge platform, does your knowledge platform contribute? And on the other side, how do you actually get it financed?
Yeah, thanks, Connie. And thanks to the Global Bioeconomy Summit for inviting me to be part of this panel. It's a very interesting discussion. I think it's actually quite valuable to bring together a panel like this one, which represents such a diverse range of expertise and views. Much of what I will say will really build, I think, on Pablo's comments. I do, think there are probably at least 3 ways that knowledge platforms, building communities can contribute to empowering evidence-based decisions, and then ultimately lead to triggering finance flow. The first, and probably arguably the most challenging, is to support collaborative knowledge generation. I think global platforms like our platform, but potentially a platform for bioeconomy, have a very unique role in providing a neutral forum, safe ground, if you will, where organizations and experts can identify gaps in knowledge and data and then work together to address those knowledge gaps. As you know, there's still a tendency, given the incentives and funding structure for research institutes, international organizations, and others to go it alone rather than collaborate on new research. I think we're starting to see that this is slowly breaking down, but given how important new data and analysis is for achieving the Sustainable Development Goals, there's certainly a need to continue improving the way we approach new knowledge and challenges. What we've seen is there's really three keys to success for this. The first is to, as Pablo said, to engage a broad range of actors, policy, private sector, and civil society, and representing a range of different disciplines. The second is to ensure that these actors are aligned on the objectives and goals of the effort. And this can be quite challenging, but without this, there is obviously a much greater risk that the group will begin to work at cross purposes. And I would say that the third critical key to success is to make sure to have a system in place to facilitate the process. And that system should not only include financing, but it also should include backstopping, support for the activities. And that's really a role that something like a bioeconomy platform could provide. I think the second way we can see platforms could contribute to empowering financing is through knowledge management. Successful platforms play a critical role in collecting the most recent knowledge, data, tools, case studies, learning materials, and provide them in a coherent manner to make them easily accessible as possible to the community. And then I would say the final way that platforms could play a role is that they can connect the key stakeholders and initiatives and provide a space to share insights and solutions. And I think, the Global Bioeconomy Summit is, of course, a perfect example of this. Summit's drawing together the leading experts in this community. They're sharing their thoughts, updates on innovation, discussing and debating next steps to drive this idea forward. I think platforms can be very effective in this role, both in-person activities, obviously once we get through the pandemic, and also virtually through webinars, online workshops, and by supporting online community discussions. So in conclusion, I would say that there are really 3 areas where communities, platforms can support both evidence-based decisions and financing, and that's through knowledge generation, knowledge management, and knowledge sharing. Thanks.
Thank you very much. And at the end of this first round, I made a promise. Michael, you actually stuck to your 3 minutes. So you said you had not explained the how. So maybe you would like to pick up the ball so that we are on an even keel.
Thank you for the opportunity. As I said before, I come from Israel. And in Israel, we are called the startup nation. Basically, because we have so many startups, we have about 1,000 new startups per year. And that means, I mean, to those of you that don't know, we are a very small nation. We are about 9 million people, that's all. So basically, those numbers means that every young boy out of the university thinks about his startup. Well, how should he have this unicorn startup? And for that, we have about 420 accelerators in Israel. We have 360 multinational R&D labs. And it's not only that, our government really encourage this entrepreneurship, this strong vibe that we have here. And we have a very generous programs of financing early stage technologies. Very, very generous one. And it's not, but that's not enough. I mean, technology needs funding, especially the early stage technology. They need funding. So we have a very vibrant VC community here in Israel. Actually, I was just noticed that we have the highest global VC funding per capita in the world, which means it's 30 times more than Europe, 2.5 times more than the Silicon Valley. I was surprised by that. Yeah. But that means that, you know, you need to encourage, and it's not only money. Money is not enough. Well, it's necessary, but it's not enough. We have also this supporting management, mentoring programs, and all these to support the ideas and turning them into products and into solutions.
Thank you, Michael. And it's a question of the entrepreneurship kind of mentality right from the beginning. And I know that a number of German startups are looking with jealous eyes on their colleagues in Israel who get money and advice much faster. Now, ladies and gentlemen, everybody has already chipped in. We have closed the Slido poll now. And I would like to share that with everybody, but especially with the panel, just to have a quick look at it and have a quick reaction to it. Well, I think the 83 participants in the poll were very unanimous. More than half say the responsibility to drive the bioeconomy is with governments, industry and business, and civil society and public, sort of second and third. Now, commenting on that, of course, I would say, does that surprise you? And I'd like to have the sort of the government representatives first. Kitty Pong, is that astonishing that our viewers, the Congress participants, see governments in the lead?
Yes, I also think that the government is playing imperative role as well. That's because when we promoting the bioeconomy, we have to make sure that the wealth is distributed fairly. So in terms of for me, I just look at the in the aspect related to innovation, science and technology. When we do promoting bioeconomy, we use what I call a dual track approach. That is, we look at both the top of the pyramid. The top of the pyramid means there are not many people engaged in it. but the value add that we create from the bioeconomy is huge, using advanced science, technology, and research. Also, at the bottom of the pyramid, many people involved, but in terms of innovation, those people, how can we make sure that those people get access to innovation, equally? So this is important. That's why the government should come and play an important role here.
Thank you. I just wanted to sort of have a very quick response to the poll, and I think talking about government, Chris, maybe you just sort of have a quick evaluation or a quick response to the outcome of the poll.
I am surprised, I have to say. I don't know, and I wonder if that would vary, across the world. And I also wonder if perhaps the COVID crisis might have colored people's impressions. I think when we're in a situation like this, folks naturally look to government, naturally think of government, but in the wider bioeconomy, I'm not sure that that's the case.
Thank you. Pablo, what's your take? More than half think government needs to chip in order to both finance and also enhance and speed the processes.
Yes, of course. I think the public inversion is very important, especially in the developing country, no? And establish incentive to enhance the investment, no? All the activity, no? Okay.
Lovely, thank you very much, which leaves sort of all the others that are looking from the outside, sort of not from a government point of view. Maybe Benjamin and then Ray and of course Michael in this row. So Benjamin, quick take?
Quick take. Yeah, I'm also a bit surprised by the outcome. But certainly it does make sense in some ways. A lot of the businesses and certainly the financial actors have been calling for many years for some policy certainty, right? So that allows them to make those long-term investments. So I think it's a very wise decision, but I am a bit surprised given that it's so driven by business, so much of the bioeconomy.
Again, it's a survey, but it's our audience, our people, of course, that are watching us, that are following it. So maybe, Ray, your observation, your tummy feeling.
Sure. It actually does not surprise me that much at all, given the fact that I think people are looking for the governments to set the operating environment here. And then obviously business and civil society and all other actors play a key role. So given that split, it's unsurprising, and I guess everyone's in different stages across the world in terms of setting that operating field in this way.
Thank you so much. Last but not least, Michael, please.
Well, I was wondering when you showed the results of this poll, I was wondering where is the audience come from, because I think that has a lot to do with culture, with experience, with business, and with the type of government. I'm not sure that you will get the same results if you do this poll in the US only, or if you do it in Europe, or if you do it in China. I mean, but if you do it in Israel, I think it would be the same as what you got.
Yeah, thank you very much for your sort of tummy feeling. And we do have a second round of questions that I would like to start. And maybe it's also something to do with the fact that in the last half year, we've seen many governments actually taking responsibility in response to the COVID-19 crisis. And therefore, it's sort of this view to government. They can actually do it in a time of crisis. So maybe they should chip in when it's a long-term project that is for the good of this planet. Now, let's get into the second round, and we also have questions coming in from the audience. So maybe let's kick off with a question from the audience, just to do the communication bit properly. Maybe to Devere, the question that I've just, Michal. How can bio-based concepts be scaled up and large industry undergo a transition to become more sustainable and more circular?
Well, it's a very interesting question. And I think from my perspective, you see, I'm mainly dealing with early stage because that's where our forte here in Israel. We take ideas and bring it into a prototype. We have a very limited domestic markets, and in order to do something which is meaningful, which has a big impact on the world, you need to go globally. Therefore, I'm mainly busy in looking for collaboration with global players outside my very narrow domestic market. And I think one of the lessons that we learned with the COVID crisis is that nobody can win it alone. We need to share forces. And one of the things that we are doing right now is we are screening all technologies that we can everywhere, food tech, agri-tech, that's what we are doing globally, and contacting those companies. And we say, let's share our efforts in order to become a real the next big thing. That's the way we act right now.
Thank you so much, Ray. When one looks at the WWF webpage, the UK webpage, then one does see a portrait of what you're doing, and there are actually sort of bits of information that everybody, like the public, the audience, can read in order to understand what you're doing. Now, you are actually addressing institutional investors like pension funds, insurance sector, and so on. Again, how do you shift them? And one sees the headlines. Institutional investors demand this. They demand that. Financial Times these days is full of it. But what is the substance as opposed to the headline?
Yes, good question. Thanks. Try to be brief on that, which is a big question. I think on the climate change agenda, I think you're seeing genuine progress in action. Still, we need to really speed up and improve. But I think it's that conversation has entered the boardrooms of financial institutions, and that's driven action, from within and in line with some of the policies coming. I think obviously where there's the gap and what we're advocating for is you cannot divorce the climate change agenda with the nature agenda or the bioeconomy. I mean, these are interlinked. If we start dealing with the climate crisis without thinking about bioeconomy or vice versa, we will lose. And so I think that's where we're trying to engage investors and banks and asset managers, insurance companies to really talk about the bioeconomy, biodiversity, and what that can bring to a sustainable economy. And how that can help them on their kind of climate change journey as well. So it's tough. We've only started the conversations, I think, in the last sort of year or two, earnestly on kind of the biodiversity side and things that are sort of not climate focused. But I think people are beginning to understand that. We produced a film called Our Planet Too Big to Fail, which has had a really great reception, and it begins to show how these things can be linked actually together. So. Yeah, I think it's more difficult on anything non-climate, but we're making a start. And for us, it's all about the interlinkages and that you can't deal with one of these problems in isolation. Otherwise, you create another.
On the way to Chris, just a very quick question. Does it make an impact? No, don't take them away. I'd still like to address Ray. Did you... excuse me, this is to our technical people. Just one quick question to Ray, and then I'm on the way to Chris. So can we have Ray again? Wonderful. Did you feel a difference in the approach once the Attenborough film was out? Like all these beacon films that are coming suddenly to public attention. And do you actually feel a difference?
Yeah, definitely. I think from all corners of the finance world, I mean, just as an example, when we launched our finance film, which is basically, on the back of the Netflix Our Planet series, a few weeks ago, we've had more than 100 requests for screenings, in a matter of a couple of weeks. We've had translation requests to 9 different languages. This is all coming from the finance sector, but also from governments. We've had interest from government policymakers as well. So yes, I think that really helps because it helps the groundswell and the constituencies get involved in these types of questions. But yes, I think those types of things can basically, ignite a fire, a sense of urgency around this issue, and people really get engaged on an emotional and also intellectual level.
Thank you. Sorry, this was just a short interlude, and I'm sorry if I confused our technicians. Now I would really like to address Chris. And having spelled that out, Chris, the question is, again, looking sort of at the influence of government, how can collaboration with researchers in academia, in the private sector, be ensured so that bioeconomy development really speeds up? Do you have sort of the silver bullet?
Well, let's take what we've learned from the COVID crisis again, which is on everyone's mind. Next generation biology, and in particular this idea of an RNA vaccine. It could be the savior of the world's population when it comes to COVID. Now, we have a long way to go, and of course, the platform technologies that have led to this were the result of investments after Ebola and Zika. But this idea of coming together quickly is important. We had to get our own governments organized. We had to and as I said earlier, our resources are distributed across, many organizations and laboratories, and then dovetail in the private sector. And one thing that made a difference is, because of the COVID crisis, we could sweep aside temporarily the complications that come from contracts, rules, even principles such as equal access that we talked about to government resources and funding. Some of that was pushed aside because of the urgency of saving lives and people's livelihoods and so forth. That probably can't be the case in regular order. It can't be the case in routine R&D and government, private sector, academic interactions in a non-crisis environment. But we do have the existence proof that when there is urgency, we can make all of this work better and all of this work faster. So I think the challenge for us is saving the lessons we learned in a crisis like COVID about how to simplify our organizations and rules and so forth, and carrying that into regular order after the crisis for all aspects of the bioeconomy.
I mean, this phrase of building back better, it really has the word better in it, and not just building back. And I think we all chip in, but then I would be very astonished if we had a disagreement on the panel about that. Now, Benjamin, I think this question might be sort of directed to you, coming in again from the audience. Yesterday we had in diverse plenaries a question about responsibility. And the person says, it is hard to decide who is responsible. What about shared responsibility?
That's a very interesting question. And I think it probably depends on the context in which that question was asked. Shared responsibility or shared liability. It is a very interesting question when it comes to things like the bioeconomy and trying to respond to the needs of the Sustainable Development Goals, and also the crisis that we face. And Chris, I thought your comment was really spot on. I think it's absolutely correct that we have experienced unprecedented collaboration, a breaking down of all kinds of walls, whether they're legal walls, egos. It's been amazing to see the level of collaboration. What's of course very interesting if you come from an environmental background about that is that we do have a number of other crises, right? We have a climate crisis, we have a pollution crisis, we have a biodiversity crisis, and the question is, can we build on the momentum of this conference, of other efforts to promote a bioeconomy, a green economy, and provide the same sense of urgency to really take those lessons from responding to COVID and make collaboration, that much more possible. And so the question of responsibility, I think, inevitably it's ultimately the responsibility of the financial institutions, but the financial institutions tend to, even today, even with best efforts and goodwill, they tend to respond to incentives, right? And they'll respond to where the greatest return can be found. So whose responsibility is it to create that? Probably citizens, probably society, and governments in response to societal demands. So I would say, in a sense, it's all of our responsibility. A bit of a cop-out, I know, for the answer, but to me, that's really the case here.
Thank you very much. And one question to Pablo, one that we premeditated already, but again, could you share your learning and your insight with us? What exactly has education training for an education and training format have to look like if we really want to get traction for the sustainable bioeconomy? Like, what's got to be in it? And no, not a half an hour lecture, but 1, 2, 3. These 3 points need to be in it in order for people to A, understand and then act on it, and B, or C, even get others to chip in.
Okay, I believe that the training of professionals must incorporate innovation in line with the extraordinary changes that business are undergoing today. Technologies for the production and transformation of biomass should be included, and of course, the protection of the environment must always be present. In Argentina, we have started for example, introduction to Argentine Bioeconomy program is an online free public activity in Spanish organized by the National Ministry of Science, Technology, and Innovation, the Agriculture, Livestock, and Fishery, and the Buenos Aires Green Exchange. More than 7,000 people have already enrolled since 2017, and many of them are foreigners, and there is a constant demand for registration. There are short courses in 3 levels. The first level includes basic and general concept. The second level consists of several elective courses oriented to technology and bioproducts. And the third is an integration level addressing environmental and social problems, as well as tools for innovation. This format enables students to go along different paths in the bioeconomy based on affinities, but always with a common beginning and end. This large population of followers led us to create a simple tool to identify profiles associated with bioeconomy that promotes networking and labor market as well. The program includes visits on site to state-of-the-art institutions, allow students to interact with professionals, senior managers. In summary, we believe that this activity is making a great contribution to the fact that in our country, many professionals speak in the language of bioeconomy. Luckily, in several parts of Latin America, similar activities were generated.
Wonderful. And Kitty Pong, the relationship between the bioeconomy-related science, between technology and innovation is something that one can influence. How can we improve that relationship and also effectively involve local primary producers, i.e. the small people, and citizens in this innovation development?
Yes. Uh, I think in Thailand, the primary producers mainly are farmers and SME. I think this group of people, the policy should address them in terms of how to help them to stay in the value chain, and innovation plays very important role. Uh, uh, then, in terms of innovation, uh, uh, this group, primary producer, will need assistance from the government more than big companies. And I think to improve their capability and get access to innovation, things like digital platform or digital transformation can help SME a lot. Also, farmers, if they can get access to a platform like to help them to know the market, to know to access to knowledge and so on, will be very important to create this kind of innovation ecosystem for those primary producers.
Thank you very much. And now I have one question from the audience. I'm going to throw it to the wolves, or maybe you're all going to shy away from it. So this time I need a hand sign, whether you want to take the question. You will know that in Germany we've introduced the CO2 tax, and it's going to only start next year, and it's at a relatively low level. So it's, well, certain groups don't think it's going to make initially much of a difference. Now, having said that, governments have to define the boundaries in which enterprises can act. There are so many regulations that prevent bio-based solutions. In how far would or does a CO2 tax influence that? And I can take two people with short answers if you want, but I do need this, this help. Wolves are a bit more hungry. Come on, Chris. You never shy away from something, and then I see
I'm
Benjamin.
Shy away
so
from
Chris
this one.
first. You shy away. Okay, fine. Point taken.
Me too.
Benjamin. Thank you.
I join you, Chris.
Okay.
Yeah. No,
okay. In this case, I've seen the hand sign from Benjamin.
Yeah, no, I guess I'll volunteer. I mean, it's a difficult question. I mean, I think it's a difficult question because it remains to be seen, right? All policy, you know, on paper it looks like one thing, and then once you start implementing it, it can create all kinds of incentives that are unanticipated. It can reach its target, and it could be frustrated. Obviously, as you said, maybe the tax rate isn't high enough to. So I mean, I think there's tremendous potential. I think the fact that we have governments that are willing to make efforts in this direction, I think is fantastic. And I think Germany needs to be commended for that. Now, the devil's in the details. Whether that tax rate has been set correctly or not is another question. And I think we'll have to see what the evidence shows once it's been implemented for a while. But I think absolutely it has the potential, and it would be great to see other countries work on similar types of initiatives. So.
Well, of course, we do have a number of other countries at various stages with various prices, but we're not going to get into that debate right now. All we think is that when we talk about financing the global bioeconomy, it might be a factor, and maybe one sees an example or analyzes an example in one country that has gone ahead, like Switzerland, for example, and then sees where other countries might be leading to or might be led. Well, I would like to continue this discussion for a long time. You've been a fantastic, wonderful, vibrant panel, and that in the realm of finance, I have to get rid of some of my prejudices. No, don't worry, I've never had prejudices. So this is a big thank you to Kitty Pong, to Chris, to Ray, to Michal, to Benjamin, and to Pablo. And have I mentioned Ray? Yes, I have. Or did I skip him? Anyway, to each and every one of you, thank you, whether you got early, whether you are staying up late, or whether you're on the same time zone as us. It was fantastic to have you on this panel. And with that, I think we all need a breather, and we're going to have it with our wonderful info bits that we have prepared. So, ladies and gentlemen, enjoy with us the next 5 minutes, something completely different.
A lot of people are really interested in making it work and moving towards a more, I would say, like greener economy.
Change is really scary for everyone. The whole industry knows that it needs to transform.
If I am going to fail, how I'm going to be seen after that? Do I have a job?
Everybody knows about the challenges that are out there. There are people that are actually willing to pay for good stuff.
The big question is how to replace fossil-based and artificial resources with bio-based resources.
Bio is the most complicated thing in the world. Their area is more sophisticated, more difficult than others.
There are inspiring stories everywhere.
If you copy and cope with nature, you can have new materials with new functions, longer lifetime, stronger robustness, less resources, less toxicity in producing, etc. And if you take that as a mixed bag together with that, why are we not trying to have an economy which is based primarily on biological resources?
Our greatest treasure is wood. Wooden house can be 700 years if you take care for it.
You have to think out of the box.
Courage in general requires that you are willing to do something.
I also have a strong inner drive for what is the right thing to do. The setup, the system as it is now is not right, it's wrong.
Why are you here in this world, and what are you doing, and what will you leave after yourself?
It's really pushing the mindsets of what the future of fashion can look like.
I'm one of these crazy ones believing that this is a good idea and this is the future of aquaculture.
They have to be more than an ordinary researcher, more than an ordinary economist. It's a higher demand on your spirits and on your brain. Unfortunately, I have to say that.
I truly believe that we can change the game.
To challenge yourself, to aim higher.
And we need to work hard.
Courage is all about trying these new things.
And if you do it with biology, you will succeed.
Deciding what to study can be tough. There's lots to think about, like which subjects will be best for your professional profile and how to choose the industry with the best career opportunities. Your BioFuture is here to help. The European bioeconomy is one of the EU's largest and most important sectors. It already employs 18 million people, and another 1 million jobs could be created by 2030. In the coming decades, we'll see an increasingly high demand for people with scientific and technological skills, and you could be one of them. Those with a bio-based education will be needed to solve problems such as producing enough food to feed the rapidly increasing global population, managing water supplies, and developing vaccines for emerging viruses. Are you ready to participate? Bio-training is extremely versatile, and although bioeducation guarantees specialist training in certain areas of the bioindustry, you'll learn lots of transferable skills that facilitate conversion to various global areas in the sector, future-proofing your career. These include improving the food industry, preserving forestry, and developing biotechnology. Studying a subject related to bioindustries puts you in the perfect position to benefit from this fast-growing sector. Focusing on bio-subjects gives you the tools to impact global vision and change the world for the better. By developing the right skills and know-how, you can apply your scientific and technological knowledge and put into practice your commitment to fighting climate change and protecting the environment and its natural resources. The Your BioFuture project is here to help you take steps towards a career in bioindustries. We're leading the way in establishing and sustaining Europe's bioeconomy by bridging the gap between education and job opportunities. You can check our website to see ongoing bio-based research activities and to discover which professional profiles are in demand. Your BioFuture's website offers you lots of useful resources, including a map of educational programs, job offers, internships, and events in your area. You can also check out recent success stories from the EU-funded bioeconomy. Visit yourbiofuture.eu to find out more.
We have already visited a number of other continents yesterday with our spotlight on the official partners of the Global Bioeconomy Summit 2020, and we're now going to look at Europe, and in fact we're looking at the European Commission. And ladies and gentlemen, as soon as we talk Europe in our context of change, we of course talk about the Green Deal. We talk about the fact that Ursula von der Leyen has claimed that it should go down to 55% of emissions on the way to a zero-emission continent by 2050. And the Parliament has said that you could even do a little bit more. You could actually reduce carbon emissions by 60% by 2030. Now, that's the big picture. In September this year, Ursula von der Leyen added that there would be enough money to actually sponsor that, to give that transition not just an idea, but also financial basis. So that's good. And there are a couple of policies that have already been present and that are there that we're going to talk about, which are a tad closer to home, but of course interrelated, which is, of course, the bioeconomy strategy and the action plan. In order to do that, I have a number of panelists, but the first panelist I'm going to has a beautiful title. So please tell me if John Bell is A, on the line, B, oh, there he is, and I can talk to him. Now, John, you are actually good morning to Brussels. You're actually being hailed as the Healthy Planet Director in DG Research and Innovation. I don't think I've ever heard such a wonderful title for anybody given in Brussels. But basically, you are leading the research and innovation transitions on climate change and on bioeconomy, food systems, environment, biodiversity, oceans, Arctic, circular economy. I mean, you name it, you all do that. Tell us, what impact does this new push by the Commission have on the bioeconomy strategy that is already out there?
Well, good morning, Connie. Thank you very much. In fact, what we're doing is we're living a great transition, and Ursula von der Leyen's Commission, in setting out the Green Deal goal very clearly, is saying this is what the European Union is and will be for the next 30 years. So this transition to climate neutral that is fair and just and that works within national resources is what we are about on this continent. And the work that we're doing here is taking research and innovation to drive that transition through the instruments like Horizon Europe, through the partnerships like the BBI we'll talk about in a moment with Philippe and colleagues, and in key areas where we need to have innovation, demonstration, and scaling up to make it a reality. I think your question about where the bioeconomy sits in all of this, if I can put it in a nutshell, we are moving in a society that is talking about the bioeconomy as a niche to a world in which we will all live in a bioeconomy by the end of the century. We are moving to a situation where we will address the fundamental challenge of the century, which is how do we reconcile the biosphere with the economy? And that will lead us to something looking like a sustainable economy, as the work we're talking about here in this Global Bioeconomy Summit, where I'd like to thank the German presidency and our colleagues in the Secretariat for facilitating this conversation at a critical moment.
So I just mentioned that you actually already had this drive towards a bioeconomy, or to supporting the bioeconomy, which, as you say, is sort of the goal, if we get it right, also on climate change and another couple of issues. But let's assume we do that. Where do you think were the elements that were already out there, like you can build upon, and where would you say do you get additional feed-in money, support, etc., from this new move towards the Green Deal?
Well, I would say two things. One is that the bioeconomy, in fact, is the oldest thing about our society, our culture, and our economy. It's so these R words that you hear: recovery, regeneration, renewal, renovation, restoration. It's about reconnecting up what needs to be done, given what we now understand are the limits of our biosphere, our planet, our climate, our biodiversity, our resources. And then it's the appliance of knowledge to that collectively to achieve a common goal, which is a world in which we do actually have a means to deal with an adapted and resilient society where we're climate neutral, but where we're using our resources with no waste, with efficiency, in a sustainable way that is both economically, ecologically, and politically sustainable wherever people live and work. So the urgency of the emergency is driving the need for research, innovation, and investment to move things forward and make them happen, make them, deploy them, de-risk them, demonstrate them, scale them up, create the market conditions. I was listening to the previous discussion. You know, there have to be the right incentives, there have to be the right marketplaces, the right regulation, the right trade environments. And I think that has been accelerated by the crisis, the great transition that we're in. And the second thing is the motor that is coming out of the post-pandemic world. And let's remember, the pandemic is the first chapter in a narrative about how we need to adjust to the way we interact with the biosphere. So coming out of this, the recovery, certainly in the European Union, will be driving and accelerating the transitions that President von der Leyen had already identified. And the huge wall of money and investment that will come with that, the largest since the Marshall Plan, will do that to accelerate these kind of new destinations where people will live and work and be reskilled and reintegrated in a world where we are driving the right kind of destinations for ourselves and the people who come after us.
Lovely, John, for sort of laying out the red carpet, or as I said this morning, the green carpet. We have agreed that we bring in 3 colleagues that you cooperate with in Brussels. So welcome Philip Mengal, who is the Executive Director of the Bio-Based Industries Joint Undertaking, and the BBIJU is definitely something not easy and pleasing to the tongue. We have Mark Parlahi, the Director of the European Forest Institute, and welcome to you. Hi, Mark. And of course, you're leading the institution, you're leading the organization as an interface between science, policy, and society. And we have already heard that a lot of attention is on European woods, forests. 20% of carbon sink, for example, could be harbored there. But not only that, a lot of the examples that we've seen in our spotlights and in our info pods were actually like, what can you make with wood other than build a house. So very interesting there. And last but not least, I'd like to bring in Sarah Mubareka. She's scientific officer at the Joint Research Center of the European Commission. And of course, whatever you're looking into will then be sort of from a scientific point of view, feed into decisions made. Now, when we look at, Mr. Mengal, when we look at the fact that sustainability is one of the key concepts, both of the Green Deal and also of the EU bioeconomy strategy, in how far does the work of the BBIJU A, fit in, support, and B, outline the importance of sustainability?
Yes, good morning. Thank you. And sorry for the BBIJU, which means Bio-Based Industries Joint Undertaking. So if I may, what is BBIJU?
You've said that a couple of times.
Sorry. Okay. So
you have already said that a couple of times. It rolls off your tongue. It doesn't of mine.
Yes, thank you. So the BBIJU is the public-private partnership between the European Commission, 3 DGs, DG GROW, Agri, and DG RTD, and a private partner, BIC, the Bio-Based Industry Consortium. The BBIJU was launched 6 years ago already with an ambitious budget of 3.7 billion euro, and this to support a research and innovation program in the bio-based industries under Horizon 2020. So since the beginning, the ambition of both public and private partners was to develop a sustainable and competitive bio-based industry in Europe, and this based on advanced biorefineries that will source their biomass sustainably. So sustainable sourcing of the biomass is absolutely key in this initiative. But, you know, we could simply consider that bioeconomy is sustainable and circular by nature because it is based on the best system ever to capture CO2 from atmosphere and to produce biomass via the photosynthesis. Indeed, our planet produces every year much more biomass than the oil extracted from soil. Just to give an example, cellulose produced by nature is the most abundant biopolymer on Earth. Around 100 billion tons of cellulose are synthesized annually by nature as the result of the photosynthesis. It is by far more than the global crude oil production of around 5.5 tons just last year. But the risk of competition with food, the land use, the ecosystem, and biodiversity protection are also critical elements to be considered. Within BBI, we consider that the European bioeconomy has to be deployed and must grow in a sustainable manner while maximizing the circularity and applying zero-waste biorefinery model and the concept of cascading use of biomass. In fact, since 2014 in BBIJU, we strive to not only bring to bio-based product from niche to norm, but to also keep the industrial deployment in our continent and thus triggering a sustainable investment and creating new jobs. If you look at today, we have in portfolio 123 granted projects with 924 beneficiaries coming from 37 countries. And all of them, they process European sustainable feedstock like municipal waste and mainly side stream from agriculture, forestry, and aquatic origin. And for example, our project using agricultural feedstock mainly use waste, byproduct, and crop grown on marginal lands. If I just consider the 11 flagship we have on the portfolio, so funded by BBIJU, they will generate 3,500 direct jobs and more than 10,000 indirect jobs. And in terms of leverage effect, for the 222 million funding from BBIJU, the industry will invest 1.3 billion euro. And these biorefineries, which are first of the kind in Europe, with proven sustainably based on the life cycle analysis, with greenhouse gas emission reduction of more than 600,000 kilotons of CO2 per year. So we also put the primary production sector as key actors of our value chain, and this in order to avoid that they remain simple suppliers. This has for consequence to increase and diversify their revenue, but also to stabilize the value chain with another contribution to the sustainability. So the potential of bio-based industries is huge. The sector today already accounts for 3.6 million direct jobs and around 750 billion euro of turnover. But the sector is still very fragmented and is still facing with risks in different segments of the value chain. The structuration of the sector is needed to maximize the investment, job creation, and to contribute to the European Green Deal in different dimensions, including its socio-economic objective. But it is also clear that the structuration must be guided towards sustainability goal with a strong environmental impact. Again, if I look back, after 6 years, now BBIJU is, yes, recognized as a high impact initiative, contributing to make Europe an attractive area where to invest in bio-based industry, with, among other positive impact, important contribution to sustainability and environmental protection. So to conclude, there is a vision 2050 developed by BIG, the private partner, together with 15 organizations representing the sector, which describe a sustainable and competitive bio-based industry in Europe, enabling a circular bio-society by 2050. That's for the vision. And following the recent impact assessment, the positive impact assessment, the perspective behind this vision as a name, and it is CBE, but it will be for the next year discussion. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And just to let our audience know, it was actually intended that you took a little bit more time for your answer because you just wanted to get it out there. And that was absolutely agreed. So thank you very much for that, Philippe. Quite interesting. John, I will come back to you on the job aspect at the end. But now I would like to bring in Sarah. So from your experience as science officer at the Joint Research Centre, is the biomass demand of the European bioeconomy in line with our global, with our planetary boundaries, of which we have a number and we're getting close at least on half of them? So can we actually talk about or achieve a truly sustainable bioeconomy in Europe?
Well,
and again, you have a little bit more time as well.
Oh, okay, good. I'll take advantage of that then. Thank you for the very thought-provoking questions. And I'm going to start with the first question, which was, is the biomass demand of the European bioeconomy in line with our planetary boundaries? I can't promise to actually answer that question to your satisfaction, but I certainly hope to provide some food for thought to the debate. So what makes that question slightly simpler is that there's no notion of time. So I don't necessarily have to consider in my answer the durability aspects. I can say in terms of quantities in the EU, on a yearly basis, we're sourcing approximately 1 billion tons of biomass. On the uses side, we're using approximately 1.2 billion tons of biomass per year. So that delta, those extra 2 million, are compensated by bio-waste. But if I did have to consider time in my answer, I would be forced to look at the trends. And here the story changes a little bit. In reality, the demand for biomass in Europe is growing each year. So it's growing by approximately 1.7%, and each sector has its own growth rate. So for example, for the biochemical sector, we have a growth rate of approximately 10% per year. And for the bioenergy sector, a growth of approximately 6% per year. In terms of volume, however, we can almost ignore the demand for biomass for biochemicals. But for bioenergy, it begins to get a little bit important to pay attention to. I mentioned, of course, the concepts of bio-waste, and we know that bioenergy is sourcing a lot from waste streams. But we have to remember that we have waste side streams because we have an industrial process. Okay, so for now, there's plenty of waste, but we have to think 20 years down the line. Okay, so I rest my case and stop there on that point. Now I'm going to come back to the question, again, focusing on today. If I look at this year's production in the fields and in the forests, I can pretty much feel confident that we do have enough biomass. But I have to admit that there is this phenomenon called climate change, and it does have an impact on our biomass availability. So natural disturbances, for example, in forests are on the rise. Insect outbreaks have increased by 600% this decade with respect to 4 decades ago. Wildfires by 230%, for example. So we have to take into consideration that the biomass available today may not be available tomorrow, or in any case, that biomass sources will vary. Okay. So I haven't said anything about imports yet. The EU actually relies on imported biomass from different production systems from all over the world. I talked about the 1 billion tons of biomass that the EU is sourcing, and actually 67 million tons of that is imported. So now to the planetary boundaries. Well, quite honestly, it's really not easy to attribute a regional consumption to planetary boundaries. There would be a lot of assumptions behind that. And furthermore, we have to admit that we don't fully understand the environmental impacts of our imports. And a detailed assessment and quantification of emissions and land footprint and species diversity footprint, et cetera, would be required along the whole supply chain. So I'm sorry I don't have an answer, but I can safely say this. Going back to what John Bell was saying, that the EU bioeconomy strategy does know this and take this into consideration. So I think I can safely say that the bioeconomy will probably shift the trajectories of our industries in a way to positively impact planetary boundaries, not just the climate-related ones or the atmosphere ones, but also species diversity and the land change-related planetary boundaries. Okay, I have very short time to answer the second question, but in any case, I think it was answered to by John Bell. Is a truly sustainable bioeconomy
it would actually be nice to sort of get a bit closer to the end. I know I've given you a carte blanche, but you've taken it.
I just wanted to say that from the scientist's point of view, when the Green Deal came out, we actually felt, we applauded it very much because now the EU is committed to this holistic approach, which was sort of missing. And this now gives us a perfect setting in which the bioeconomy can shine, because it can contribute to really specific targets that are within the Green Deal. And I close with that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And with that, I turn to Mark. Mark, I've already sort of hailed forests as something really good, not just pleasurable, but also useful. And it's actually one of the cornerstones of the European bioeconomy. Now, how do you see the role of bioeconomy and the forest-based sector in the European Green Deal? What role is it going to play? What are your expectations? Is it going to become more important? And again, so let me do a proper expectation management, not just say you have time. 3 minutes would be lovely.
Thank you, Connie. Good morning to everybody. And John, thank you very much for inviting me today to this panel. First of all, I would like to highlight that in my personal opinion, the EU Green Deal fails to take advantage of a transformative concept such as the bioeconomy to be able to address more holistically many of the societal challenges that are at the center of the Green Deal. So in the next minute, I would like to give you 3 examples, 3 reflections on how I see that the bioeconomy, especially the forest-based bioeconomy, could play a central role in realizing the ambitions of the Green Deal. First of all, one of the main goals of the Green Deal is to ensure a socially fair transition, to ensure inclusive prosperity. And to do that, the bioeconomy is crucial. This is due to the nature, distribution, and ownership of biological resources, such as agriculture and forest, and the way they are managed and processed, which, of course, in many cases tends to be more complex and more costly compared to fossil resources, but at the same time provides an opportunity to distribute jobs, prosperity, investment, infrastructures in wider parts of the territory, especially in rural areas. Look, for example, at the European forest-based sector. It provides more than 3 million jobs in Europe, more than 3 million jobs. This is many more than the 3 energy-intensive industries of steel, cement, and chemicals all together. In addition, the European forest-based sector includes 400,000 SMEs and provides some sort of income to around 16 million forest owners. This is an amazing socio-ecological infrastructure that is currently absent in the EU Green Deal. And I wonder how we can put forward a green growth strategy for Europe without engaging explicitly those that are managing our most important green infrastructure, which are our forests, which cover 40% of the EU land surface. Another example is related to the goal of the Green Deal to move towards a circular and climate neutral economy. Again, the bioeconomy is indispensable to do that, because as Philip mentioned, biological resources are circular and renewable by nature, and bio-based solutions are crucial to decarbonize industrial sectors such as construction, textiles, chemicals, packaging, and even transport. Remember that now we can produce sustainable wood-based textiles, which result in 5 to 6 times less carbon emissions than polyester. And in addition, they don't generate the problem of microplastics that we create when we are washing clothes made from polyester. And these wood-based textiles can be produced in circular industrial systems. Another paradigmatic example that you mentioned, Connie, already, is the fact that wood is revolutionizing the building construction sector, which, remember, is dominated by 2 carbon-intense materials, concrete and steel, responsible for more than 12% of the global carbon emissions and for more than 50% of all the resources that we extract from Earth. More than 40 billion tons are dedicated to producing concrete and steel. And using wood in construction is one of the most effective ways we have to reduce the amount of materials and the carbon footprint. And this is not only because using wood avoids great carbon emissions compared to concrete and steel, but because de facto using wood in construction is a carbon storage solution. For every cubic meter of wood products that we use in a building, we are storing a ton of CO2. So wooden buildings allow our cities to become carbon storage infrastructures. And just the third example, which is also crucial, the bioeconomy can be the best strategy to protect and enhance biodiversity. Because at the end of the day, a bioeconomy is powered by biodiversity. Biodiversity determines the capacity of our biological resources to adapt and evolve in a changing environment. And this means also that a profitable, long-term sustainable bioeconomy with the right incentives can help to put biodiversity at the center of the investment agenda, attract commitments from forest owners, farmers, and private companies to invest back in biodiversity, which is the true engine of a bioeconomy. So with these examples, I just wanted to share with you my a bit pessimistic reflections, because I believe that the EU Green Deal could have taken much more advantage of such concepts. I believe that the bioeconomy is really the missing link in the Green Deal, connecting many of the dots, many of the societal challenges that we need to address in a very holistic manner. So I still hope that through persons like John and Philip, we can really make the point and take more advantage of this concept in the future.
Lovely. Thank you very much for almost sticking to your time. With that, ladies and gentlemen, we have sort of brought in our three speakers. Panelists would mean that I could address you a second time. This is not going to happen. But thank you so much, all three of you, for sharing your insights from the point where you are standing. Now, let's talk to the eagle. So, John, you just got a new attribute apart from the one that I gave you or that you were given at the beginning. We have a number of things that are there that do not just depend on your directorate. We have the job question. And last week, for example, there was this big conference on how to create new jobs, new training possibilities for young people and for older to shift from one side, old jobs that are no longer, to new jobs. So this must be something where you're looking forward to expanding both thinking and training in the bioeconomy.
Yeah, thanks a million, Connie, and thank you, colleagues. It's very illuminating and inspiring as always. The difference between optimism and hope is a plan, as one wise man said, Connie. And it's nice, all this talk about the bioeconomy, but deploying it and making it reality, as our speakers have said, means you've actually got to work on a number of specific policy levels. So we have a thing called a strategy, and the strategy has three major areas, about investment, regionalization, and the planetary boundary. But within that, there are specific actions. Now, what you've raised is, if we're going to have this socioeconomic transition, you need to have education and skills and curriculum and so forth. And that's a key action. Our commissioner, Maria Gabriel, in fact, is commissioner for ourselves, for the JRC, and for education and culture. So this is one of the things that we will be taking forward. You also need investment. You need to innovate and have skills. You need to develop the markets. And then you need the industrial innovation, infrastructure and policies to scale up what is there. But what you need is you need to deliver into the other policies who are responsible for shaping the markets, investing the skills and so forth. So what Mark is saying, I would take issue slightly. I think the bioeconomy is actually central to a sustainable bioeconomy is central to a number of the key policies in the 8 policies of the Green Deal. If you think about, it's actually written in as one of the 9 criteria for rural development now in the Common Agricultural Policy. It's central in farm to fork in terms of diversity, fertilizers, nutrient cycles, water, biodiversity. It's critical in terms of the industrial part of the circular economy policy. It's central to the post-waste strategy. It's critical in terms of the pollution strategy. All of these policies which are going to be implemented, and in terms of the carbon goals, the decarbonisation factors, Philippe picked up some of this, and I think in what Mark was saying in particular, there's this huge opportunity now in what's called the renovation wave, which was launched last week, the Neue Bauhaus, as it was called, to do the things that Mark is saying, is to mainstream the innovation technology with a view to serving the goals. We have to bring together strategic goals, policy, investment, market formation, the means and the skills to deploy it, and we need to create a space in which we can also take risks. We need to take risks which the private sector won't yet take. That's why the work of what we're doing in the BBI, which will transform itself into a new acronym about the bioeconomy in Europe, which is about a circular bioeconomy, about sustainability. We need to work at all of these levels and quickly. And last but not least, we need countries, regions, and the places where people live and work to be fundamentally involved in the beginning. So whether it's regions, rural communities, these have all got to be hardwired into the planning, which is central to the way we do things in the European Union. So I'm much more, I think the bioeconomy is kind of the secret weapon of transition. It's the intelligent green algorithm that is ticking away behind this big shift. And as I said, we were in the century of physics with the digital. We're now in the century of biology as the pandemic has woken us up, and bringing together the biosphere and the economy. It's happening, but it needs to be organized and planned. And as Roberta was saying earlier on, we need to understand the boundary conditions. Thanks.
I just have one last question. You know, journalists always have one last question, and this is hopefully to be answered relatively quickly. You were taking us right at the beginning towards the end of the century when you say all is going to be bioeconomy. As opposed to climate change, where we know there are some boundaries we cannot overstep, or unless we don't want our grandchildren to survive. Getting into that state of living in a green, sustainable, circular bioeconomy is going to take some time. Where do you think, where are we headed? What is sort of the next time limit that we need to hit?
Well, it's not going to take time. We're out of time. We're not out of ideas, we're out of time. And I think the pandemic, the upside of the pandemic and what was said in the previous session is one of the things we've realized is we can do whatever if we can convene knowledge, money, political will, the public, and the means to do that, capabilities of people, you can even tackle something which has completely come out of the blue like the pandemic. I think it's quite clear what you're going to see happening very quickly. Somebody was saying in the previous session, you know, the boardrooms are working out how this will work for them. Markets will be shaped. Innovations will be licensed. The European Union will set all of its instrumentation. It's looking at the taxonomy of its finance and its economic and monetary policy, all of its instruments, all of its legislation. This will happen. And the question is how we can bring sustainability to happen in the best possible way as quickly as possible for those who need it most, from the buildings they live in, the way in which food is produced, to the nutrients, the medicines of the future, the biological, the bioprospecting, the biosecurity, the way in which we will do, alongside renovation, we have a huge task for resilience and adaptation to regenerate our ecosystems. There are whole new areas of the economy which we didn't know about 20 years ago that are now called the digital economy. The bioeconomy, what will be known as a bioeconomy in 20 years' time, will simply be the economy that will be there, because if we haven't reconciled the biosphere and the economy, there'll be no place to live and work.
I think, John, those were wonderful last words. I'm going to leave it there, and I would like to say thank you in the direction, I assume, of Brussels. Not quite sure whether all of you are right at the moment in the vicinity of Brussels, or maybe strewn all over Europe and just digitally united. But then, of course, here in Berlin, thank you very much, Philippe, Mark, Sarah, and of course, John. And all we can say is keep up the good work and keep up especially your own energy. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Connie. Thanks, Sarah.
And for us now, ladies and gentlemen, this means we are going to enter a stage where we are going to breathe through, where we are going to sort of pool our resources again in order to have part 4 of the 4-part conference that we're hosting here from Berlin this afternoon is going to be very interesting. We're going to talk about the communiqué of the Global Bioeconomy Summit 2020 quite a bit. We're going to have another chat with the partners of the conference, but that's going to happen after 3 o'clock Berlin time. So wherever you are, either good night or a really good morning, or just continue having a good day. But don't forget to be with us again at 3 o'clock. Till then, bye-bye.